The cold always found me first. My lungs seized in a final agonized gasp. A familiar numbness spread from my extremities inward. This was my 1006th death. My consciousness shattered into a million frozen fragments. Then the unbearable pull yanked me backward through time. I slammed into my past self with a silent scream. My eyes snapped open to a world not yet dead. The bus seat's cheap fabric scratched against my neck. Sunlight streamed through the grimy window onto my face. I could still feel the ice in my veins. I could still feel her hand slipping from mine. The promise I failed to keep echoed in my mind. I had sworn to save her this time. Her name was a ghost on my lips. The bus driver shouted at a speeding car. The other passengers mumbled about their boring lives. They had no idea what was coming. The Great Frost was exactly 10 minutes away. Reality would tear open like a rotten wound. Monsters made of absolute zero would pour out. Humanity would end in a single day. I had seen this opening scene 1,000 times. I had fought and died 1,000 times. I had failed to change the outcome every time. My fists clenched tightly on my trembling knees. A profound exhaustion settled deep into my bones. 1,006 cycles was far too many. I was a record of every single failure. I was a museum of every possible death. My mind was a library of lost causes. Each regression had chipped away my soul. Nothing remained but a core of pure ice. This would be the very last one. I would not try to save them. I would not try to be a hero. Heroes die screaming in this frozen hell. I would burn it all down instead. The system itself was the true enemy. It demanded sacrifice and gave only despair. I would find its heart and shatter it. I would break the cycle for good. Even if it meant my final destruction. The bus shuddered to a sudden stop. My stop was still 2 blocks away. This small change sent a jolt through me. A butterfly's wing could cause a hurricane. I never took my eyes off the clock. The woman beside me gathered her shopping bags. She smiled absently at her phone screen. She would be a frozen statue soon. Her smile would last for all eternity. A sudden and violent lurch threw me forward. The entire world outside the window flickered. For a single heartbeat, everything turned pure white. A silent scream filled the air itself. Then the familiar sound returned all at once. The passengers groaned and adjusted their clothing. They blamed it on a pothole or something. But I knew the terrible truth already. The timeline had hiccuped for a moment. Reality was becoming unstable from my repetitions. My very existence was straining the world. The end was beginning a few seconds early. I stood up and walked toward the door. The driver gave me a puzzled look. I ignored him and stepped onto the sidewalk. The air tasted wrong and felt heavy. A deep chill ran down my spine. This was not part of the script. My first death always came later. A frost titan always crushed this bus. I always died trying to save someone. But the bus drove away perfectly fine. It turned a corner and vanished from sight. I stood alone on the empty street. The sky began to darken unnaturally fast. The temperature plummeted 30 degrees in seconds. My breath misted in the suddenly frigid air. Windows on nearby buildings cracked loudly from the cold. A shrill scream echoed from an alleyway. It was not a human sound at all. It was the screech of rending reality. This was not how it began. The timeline had truly fractured this time. My countless deaths had broken something fundamental. A wave of pure dread washed over me. I had no plan for this beginning. My 1,000 lives of knowledge were useless. Everything was wrong and unfamiliar and terrifying. I was just as blind as everyone else. A shadow detached itself from the alley. It was low to the ground and fast. Its form was a blur of shifting ice. This creature was new and unknown to me. It moved with a horrifying predatory grace. It was a hound made of jagged frost. Its eyes glowed with a pale blue light. It fixed its gaze directly upon me. It knew exactly who I was. It recognized me as the anomaly, the thing that did not belong here. The Hound of Frost charged without warning. I had no weapon and no plan. My body moved on, pure instinct alone. 1,000 lifetimes of combat took over. I sidestepped its initial lunge by a millimeter. Its frozen claws scraped against the concrete. The sound was like nails on a chalkboard. It spun around with impossible speed for another attack. I backed into a cold brick wall. I was trapped with nowhere left to run. This was an embarrassingly short final regression. The frosthound leaped toward my face. Its maw opened to reveal endless darkness. A single thought burned in my mind. I refused to die like this again. A heat ignited deep within my chest. It was a strange and foreign sensation. It felt like a cursed and angry fire. My vision tinted itself a sudden crimson. I screamed and thrust my hands forward, not to block, but to attack it. A gout of black flame erupted outward. It consumed the frosthound completely and utterly. The creature shattered into a million icy pieces. The black fire vanished just as quickly. I collapsed onto my knees, gasping for air. My hands were unharmed, but felt frozen. My soul itself felt colder than ever. I had never possessed this power before. This was my 1007th life, and it had already changed everything forever. The black flame left a void in me. It felt like it had eaten my warmth. I stared at my perfectly normal hands. They should be charred, black, or frozen solid. They were neither, and that terrified me more. This was an unknown variable in my equation. My 1006 lives meant nothing. This power was a complete and total stranger. It felt ancient and hungry and deeply cursed. I could still feel its embers inside my chest. A cold fire waiting for more fuel. The shattered ice of the hound began melting. It evaporated into a faint, shimmering mist. The air itself was still growing colder. More of them would be coming very soon. They were drawn to heat and life. I had just lit a massive signal fire. I pushed myself up onto my feet. My body felt heavy with a new fatigue. This was not the physical kind of tiredness. It was the soul-deep weariness of change. I had to move and move right now. My apartment was only 3 blocks away. It would be my initial staging ground. I had supplies there from previous cycles, or I did in every other timeline. This world was already completely different now. I ran down the deserted frozen street. The sky had turned a bruised purple. Unnatural shadows stretched long across the pavement. I heard more screeches in the distance behind me. They were getting closer with every second. I focused only on putting one foot down. My breath came out in ragged white plumes. The cold bit into my exposed skin. I had forgotten how painfully cold it felt. After so many deaths, I became numb, but this fresh skin still remembered feeling warm. I rounded the corner onto my street. A woman was frozen solid mid-sprint. Her face was locked in a perfect scream. A layer of rime covered her eyes. This was the familiar horror I remembered well. My apartment building stood just across the road. Its door was hanging off one hinge. I saw movement deep within the dark lobby. Something large and patient was waiting inside. I did not have time for this. I needed the supplies in my apartment, especially the thermal gear and the emergency rations. I could not fight a titan yet, not without a proper weapon or plan. I ducked into a shattered storefront instead. The glass crunched loudly under my shoes. I froze and listened for any movement. Nothing responded to the sound I made. The store was a small convenience shop. Most of its shelves were already knocked over. Junk food was scattered across the dirty floor. I saw a delivery door in the back. It might lead to the rear alley. That alley connected to my building-as-a-service in trance. It was a risk, but everything was now. I moved quickly through the wreckage toward it. The door was locked from the other side. I braced myself and kicked it hard. The flimsy lock snapped with a loud crack. The door swung open into pure darkness. The air in the alley was deathly still. I could see my building's service door ahead. It was only 20 feet away from me. A low growl rumbled from my left. Another frost hound emerged from a dumpster. This one was larger than the first one. Its icy fur bristled with sharp, jagged spikes. It paced slowly, cutting off my path. Its glowing blue eyes narrowed at me. It could sense the strange fire within me. It was wary of me this time. I had no desire to use that power again. It felt like it cost me something precious. I reached down and grabbed a metal pipe. It was cold and solid in my hand, a familiar weight from 1,000 battles past. The hound lunged with its maw wide open. I sidestepped and swung the pipe downward hard. It connected with the creature's frozen flank. The impact sent a painful jolt up my arm. The pipe just bounced off its icy hide. The hound spun and swiped at my legs. I jumped back, but its claw grazed me. A line of burning cold seared my calf. I ignored the pain and switched my grip. I had to aim for its legs. Its joints were always the weakest point. It lunged again, and I dropped low. I thrust the pipe like a spear upward. It jammed into the beast's armpit area. The creature let out a piercing shriek of pain. It was a sound of shattered glass and rage. I yanked the pipe out and struck again. I hit the same spot with all my strength. A crack appeared in its icy armor. A splinter of blue light shone from within. I drove the pipe into that crack. The hound exploded into a shower of shards. I stood there, breathing heavily in the silence. My leg throbbed with a deep, cold pain. I looked at the service door ahead. I had to keep moving forward now. I would not be stopped this early. I limped to the door and pulled it open. The familiar stairs led up to my floor. My apartment was on the 5th story. The elevator would be a death trap now. I began the long and painful climb upward. Each step sent a jolt through my leg. The cold wound was spreading its nub. I reached my floor and pushed the door open. The hallway was dark and eerily quiet. My apartment door was at the very end. It was still closed and looked untouched. I allowed myself a sliver of hope. I took a step into the hallway. A floorboard creaked loudly under my weight. Every door in the hallway swung open at once. Pale blue eyes glowed from every doorway. I was surrounded by at least 6 hounds. They had been waiting here for me. They knew I would come here eventually. This was a trap, and I walked right in. The lead hound stepped into the hallway. It was the size of a small bear. This was a pack alpha, and it was smart. It knew my habits from other times. The system was adapting to my presence. It was learning from all my past failures. The alpha hound let out a low growl. The other hounds began to circle me slowly. I was cornered with my back to the wall. The cold fire in my chest stirred awake. It demanded release and promised me destruction. I felt my hands grow cold and numb. Black smoke curled from my fingertips softly. I had no choice left but to use it. I would burn this entire building down. I would reduce it all to ashes. I embraced the cursed flame deep inside me. I let it fill my veins with ice. The alpha hound leaped toward my throat. I met its charge with my open palm. A vortex of black fire erupted between us. It consumed the alpha in an instant. The fire then leaped to the other hounds. It hungered for more, and I let it. The hallway became a whirlwind of dark flame. It burned cold and left only frost behind. When the fire receded, the hounds were gone. Only patches of black ice remained. I fell to my knees, completely exhausted. My apartment door was now just ahead. I had paid the price for entry. I did not know what the cost was, but I would find out very soon. I stood up and walked to my door. I turned the knob and stepped inside. My sanctuary was exactly how I left it. This time I would not just survive. This time I would make them burn. The familiar space offered me no comfort now. I immediately closed and barricaded the door behind me. My hands moved with a practiced, frantic speed. I shoved a heavy bookshelf against the doorframe. The silence in the apartment was absolutely deafening. My own breathing sounded far too loud to me. I leaned against the wall to steady myself. My injured leg pulsed with a deep, cold ache. I needed to assess my new situation quickly. My plan required supplies and information right now. I limped toward the bedroom and my emergency kit. A floorboard creaked under my weight unexpectedly. I froze and listened for any outside threat. Nothing responded to the small sound I made. I continued into my small, messy bedroom. The emergency duffel bag was under my bed. I pulled it out and unzipped it swiftly. Thermal blankets and dried food filled the main compartment. A basic first aid kit was there too. I also found a good multi-tool and water purifier. These were essentials for the initial frozen hours. I had gathered them 1,000 times before, but I needed something more this time around. I needed a real weapon, not just tools. I walked to my closet and pushed clothes aside. A long, heavy object was wrapped in a blanket. I pulled it out and let the blanket fall. A pristine fire axe gleamed under the dim light. I had taken it from a construction site. Its weight felt solid and reassuring in my hands. This was better than a cold metal pipe. I set it down next to the duffel bag. My leg reminded me of its injury again. I sat on the bed and rolled up my pants. The gash on my calf was nasty looking. The skin around it was already turning blue. A faint shimmer of frost coated the wound. This was not a normal injury at all. The creature's claws carried the HELLSCAPE's absolute zero. I rummaged through the first aid kit for antiseptic. I poured it on the wound and hissed in pain. The liquid sizzled and froze on contact instantly. It was completely useless against this kind of injury. The cold was spreading up my legs slowly. I could feel its numbness creeping inward. I needed heat, but I had no flame. Then I remembered the power inside me, the black fire that burned cold and hungry. It was a terrible and dangerous idea, but I had no other options left to try. I placed my hand over the frozen wound. I focused on the embers in my chest. I coaxed them forward with a desperate need. A tiny wisp of black smoke curled out. It touched the blue frost on my skin. The frost receded under the strange dark energy. The numbness stopped its advance immediately afterward. The wound remained, but the spreading cold ceased. That was good enough for me right now. I bandaged it tightly with a clean roll. I stood up and tested my weight on it. The pain was sharp, but manageable for now. I needed to see the outside situation now. I walked to the window and peered outside carefully. I moved the curtain just a single inch. The world below was a frozen, twisted nightmare. The street was a glacier of jagged blue ice. Strange crystalline structures grew on the buildings opposite. I saw shapes moving within the icy mist. They were larger than the hounds I fought. This was progressing much faster than previous cycles. The timeline fracture was accelerating the invasion. I had less time than I originally thought. My apartment was not a safe haven. It was a temporary box waiting to collapse. I needed to move toward the core. The system's heart was always the goal. I had never reached it in any life. But this time, I had a new weapon. This time, I would fight fire with fire. A sudden impact shook my entire building. The bookshelf against the door shuddered violently. Something very large was in the hallway outside. Another impact hit the door with immense force. The wood splintered around the deadbolt and lock. I grabbed the fire axe and my duffel bag. I backed away toward the bedroom window quickly. The window was my only escape route now. The door exploded inward in a shower of splinters. A monstrous head filled the doorway completely. It was a frost titan in its early stage. Its face was a mask of shifting ice. One large blue eye scanned the room slowly. It focused on me and let out a roar. The sound vibrated through my very bones. I turned and ran for the bedroom window. I swung the fire axe at the glass hard. The window shattered outward into the cold air. I looked down at the 5-story drop. It was certain death on the frozen ground below. The titan shoved its way into my apartment. Furniture snapped and broke under its immense weight. I climbed onto the windowsill without any hesitation. I would not let it take me here. I focused every bit of my will inward. I called upon the cursed flame inside me. It responded with an eager, icy rush. Black fire enveloped my legs and feet completely. I stepped off the windowsill into open air. I did not fall toward the ground below. I ran down the vertical wall of the building. The black fire burned footprints into the brickwork. I hit the ground running and did not stop. The titan's roar of frustration echoed behind me. I sprinted into the frozen labyrinth of streets. My new power had a practical use after all. I had taken the first step into the abyss. The hellscape had truly begun for me now. I would find its heart and end it. I would burn it all down to nothing. The frozen ground crunched sharply under my feet. I ran without any clear destination in mind. My only goal was putting distance behind me. The Titan's roar faded into the howling wind. My lungs burned from the brutally cold air. Each breath felt like swallowing tiny shards of glass. The black fire had receded back inside me. It left a hollow coldness in its wake. Using it demanded a price I could not see. I ducked into a narrow alley to rest. I leaned against a frost-covered brick wall. My leg protested the sudden stop violently. I needed to find proper shelter soon. This exposed area was a death sentence waiting. I peered out at the main street, cautiously. Jagged ice spikes had impaled several abandoned cars. Everything was coated in a thick layer of rime. This part of the city was unfamiliar to me. My random escape had taken me somewhere new. 1,000 lives, and I still got lost. A faint flicker of light caught my eye. It was orange and warm, and utterly wrong. It came from a basement window across the street. Real fire had no place in this hellscape. Fire drew the frost creatures like moths. It was a foolish and suicidal act. Someone was alive over there and being stupid. I should turn around and leave them. Their inevitable death was not my problem. I had sworn to burn it all down. That did not include saving doomed idiots with fires. Another flicker of light pulsed from the window. It was a steady, rhythmic, inviting glow. It was too controlled to be an accident. Curiosity was a luxury I could not afford. Yet my feet began moving on their own. I crossed the street with my axe. Ready? The building was an old, narrow row house. Its door was already broken halfway off. I pushed it open and stepped inside silently. The interior was dark and smelled of dust. The orange lights glowed from a doorway ahead. Stairs led down into a basement area. I could hear the faint crackle of fire. I could also hear the sound of soft breathing. I descended the steps, one at a time. Each creak of the wood sounded like thunder. I tightened my grip on my fire axe. I expected a trap or an ambush below. I reached the bottom and saw the room. A single candle burned on a wooden crate. Its flame was contained within a glass jar. An old man sat on a folding chair. He was wrapped in many thick woolen blankets. He looked up at me with calm eyes. He did not seem surprised to see me. He gestured to a second chair opposite him. I remained standing in the doorway instead. I kept my weapon clearly visible to him. "You are using fire." "Primerasa I diflotli. It will draw every creature 4 blocks. The light is contained within the glass," he replied. "The cold cannot sense its particular warmth. It is a very small and clever trick." His voice was raspy but completely steady. He looked ancient, yet utterly unafraid of me. This was not a normal reaction at all. Normal people screamed or attacked or froze. They did not offer strangers a seat. "Who are you?" I demanded with suspicion. "How are you still alive right now?" "I am just a man waiting," he said. "I have been waiting for a very long time. I knew someone different would eventually come." His words sent a chill down my spine. He spoke like he knew about the cycles. He could not possibly know about them. I had never encountered him in any timeline. I took a step further into the room. The candle's warmth was a faint illusion. The real cold was still deep inside me. "What do you mean waiting for someone?" I asked. "The wheel must break at some point," he said. "One spoke must finally snap under the pressure. You are that broken spoke, I believe." He pointed a bony finger at my chest. "I can see the cold fire you carry. It is a old and hungry kind of power. It is the only thing that can oppose them." I stared at him with complete disbelief. This old man knew about my cursed flame. He should not have any knowledge of it. This was my first time using this power. Nothing in my past lives prepared me for this. "What are you talking about, old man?" I said. "They are not just mindless monsters, son," he whispered. "They are a system, a purpose, a will. They seek to perfect this world through frost. They erase all that is flawed and warm. Your fire is an impurity in their design. That is why they will always hunt you." His words echoed my own thoughts exactly. I had always felt the system's intelligent hatred. I had just never heard it described aloud. "How do you know all of this?" I asked. "I listened to the ice for years," he said. "It whispers if you know how to hear. It boasts of its perfect silent victory. It never considered a flaw like you." He smiled a thin and weary smile at me. "You are the grain of sand in the machine. You will grind its gears to a halt." I finally lowered my axe just a little. This was not a trap, it was something else. It was a glimmer of heat in the white, a tiny spark of knowledge in the endless ignorance. "Can you tell me how to break it?" I asked. My voice sounded desperate even to me. He shook his head slowly, from side to side. "The path is yours alone to walk," he said. "I can only give you a single warning. Your fire is both a weapon and a poison. It will burn you away from the inside. You must find the balance to survive it. You must not let it consume you completely." He gestured toward the candle on the crate. "Fire needs fuel, but also needs control. Remember that when the darkness tempts you." A loud crash came from upstairs suddenly. The old man's calm expression did not change. He looked toward the ceiling with a sigh. "They have found my little candle after all," he said. "You should leave now, through the back way. There is a door behind those boxers over there. It leads into the sewer tunnels below the street. You will be safer down there for a while." Another crash shook dust from the ceiling above. I could hear heavy footsteps on the main floor. "Come with me," I said to the old man. "I can get you out of here alive." He shook his head again with finality. "This time, my part in this is already over," he said. "I gave you the warning you needed to hear. That is all I was meant to do. Now go and break the wheel for us." He turned his gaze back to the candle. He would not look at me again after that. I heard the basement door splintering apart upstairs. I moved to the back of the room. I shifted a stack of heavy cardboard boxers. A small metal door was hidden behind them. I pulled it open and saw a dark tunnel. I looked back at the old man one last time. He sat perfectly still, watching his candle flame. I stepped into the tunnel and closed the door. I heard the final crash above me moments later. There was no scream, only silence afterward. I was alone again in the freezing darkness. But I carried his words with me now. I had a warning and a direction now. The glimmer of heat had shown me the way. The metal door sealed shut behind me, completely. I was plunged into an absolute pitch blackness. The air smelled of damp rot and old metal. I could hear water dripping somewhere far ahead. I stood perfectly still for a long moment. My eyes struggled to adjust to the complete lack of light. I could not see my own hand before me. This was the city's old sewer maintenance tunnel. I had used them in a few past lives. They were dangerous, but often creature-free. Their maze-like layout could confuse anyone easily. I began to walk forward with one hand outstretched. My fingers brushed against cold, slimy concrete. The footing was uneven and treacherously slippery. Each step echoed faintly in the narrow passageway. My injured leg complained with every movement I made. The old man's words repeated inside my mind. He called my power a hungry impurity. He said it would burn me away inside. I could already feel that cold, hollow feeling. It was a void that demanded to be filled. I needed to find a way out soon. I needed to see the sky again. I walked for what felt like an hour. The tunnel began to slope gently upward. A faint light appeared in the distance ahead. It was a pale and sickly blue glow. It was not the warm light of day. It was the unnatural light of the hellscape. I moved toward it with cautious curiosity. The tunnel ended at a large grated opening. The grate was old and heavily rusted. I peered through the bars into the world above. I was in a large public plaza now. The space was dominated by a massive fountain. The fountain was now a solid block of ice. The statue in the center was completely unrecognizable, and standing before it was a frost titan. This one was fully formed and immense. It stood at least 15 feet tall. Its body was a sculpture of jagged blue ice. It radiated a palpable aura of absolute zero. It was not moving or patrolling the area. It was simply standing there, perfectly still. Its head was tilted up toward the purple sky. It was like it was listening to something. I had never seen one behave this way. They were always hunting, always destroying, always moving. This was something new and deeply unsettling. A faint sound reached my ears from above. It was a low and resonant humming noise. It was coming from the motionless frost titan. The sound vibrated through the great eye was holding. It was not a mindless animal sound. It sounded like a chant or a song. The tone was mournful and ancient and powerful. This was the scream of the first Frost Titan. But it was not a scream of rage. It was a scream of profound sorrow. It was a sound of endless, lonely pain. The song wormed its way into my brain. I could feel it, trying to freeze my thoughts. I could feel the cursed flame stir in response. The black fire disliked the Titan's song. It wanted to silence the haunting noise. I clamped down on the impulse with effort. I needed to observe and learn right now. The Titan's head slowly turned toward my position. Its single eye glowed with a fierce light. It had sensed the disturbance in my soul. It had felt my fire's reactive hatred. The singing stopped, and the plaza fell silent. The Titan took a step toward my hiding place, then another step, and then another after that. Its heavy footfalls shook the ground beneath me. It knew exactly where I was hiding. I backed away from the grate quickly. I turned and ran back into the dark tunnel. I heard the great being torn away behind me. A blast of freezing air chased me down the passage. The Titan would not fit in the tunnel, but it could still reach inside for me. I heard its massive arms scraping against the entrance. Icicles formed on the walls around me rapidly. The tunnel itself was beginning to freeze solid. I rounded a corner and pressed against the wall. I heard the Titan's frustrated roar echo behind me. Then the singing started again, but much closer. The sound was distorted by the narrow tunnel. It became a dissonant screech of shattered glass. The pressure of the song intensified dramatically. My head felt like it was going to split open. The cursed flame roared to life inside my chest. It would not be suppressed any longer. It flooded my veins with its icy power. Black smoke poured from my mouth and eyes. My vision turned a sharp, bloody red. The Titan's song was a direct challenge to it. My fire would answer that challenge with violence. I lost control of my body completely. I turned and marched back toward the tunnel entrance. The axe in my hand felt incredibly light. The Titan's arm was still scraping inside the tunnel. I swung the axe with all my newfound strength. The blade did not bounce off its icy hide. The black fire transferred to the weapon instantly. The axe bit deep into the Titan's wrist. A crack appeared with a sound like thunder. The Titan's song became a shriek of actual pain. It tried to pull its arm back out. I swung the axe again at the same spot. The black flame burned with an eager hunger. A large chunk of the Titan's hand broke off. The creature withdrew its arm with a final roar. I stood there breathing heavily in the dark. The black fire slowly receded back inside me. The red haze lifted from my vision gradually. I looked down at the chunk of ice. It was the size of a small car. It was melting slowly into a blue liquid. The Titan's song was gone, replaced by silence. I had won this small confrontation decisively, but the victory felt hollow and empty. The fire had controlled me, not the other way. The old man's warning echoed in my mind. This power was indeed a dangerous poison. I needed to find fuel, and I needed control. I continued down the tunnel away from the plaza. I had to find another way out now. I had drawn far too much attention to myself. The system would be hunting me relentlessly now. I was the impurity that needed to be erased, and I had just announced my location loudly. The tunnel's darkness felt heavier after the fight. My own breathing was the only sound I heard. The cursed flame inside me felt satisfied for now. That satisfaction scared me more than its hunger. I had let it take control completely. I had become a passenger in my own body. The old man's warning was proving true already. I needed to find a way out soon. I needed to see the sky and regroup. The tunnel branched into two separate paths ahead. I chose the left one purely on instinct. This path sloped upward more steeply than before. A dim gray light filtered from somewhere up ahead. It was the washed-out light of the hellscape. I followed it toward a circular opening above. A rusted metal ladder led up to a manhole cover. I climbed it slowly with my axe slung on my back. I pushed against the cover with my shoulder. It shifted with a loud, grating sound of metal. I lifted it just enough to peer outside. I was on a narrow side street now. Abandoned cars were frozen into grotesque sculptures of ice. The air was still and eerily silent. I climbed out and replaced the cover quietly. I needed to get my bearings immediately. I recognized this street after a moment of looking. I was only a few blocks from the river. That was not a good place to be. The river would be a wide-open space. It would be a killing field for frost creatures. I needed to move parallel to it instead. I kept to the shadows of building alcoves. My senses were stretched to their absolute limit. Every flicker of movement made me tense up. I turned a corner and froze in my tracks. A figure was standing in the middle of the road. It was a person with her back to me. They were wearing a bright red winter jacket. The color was a violent shock in the monochrome. It was the most foolish thing I had ever seen. The person was just standing there perfectly still. I knew this was undoubtedly a trap. It had to be a trap for me. No one could survive out here dressed like that. I raised my axe and took a step forward. The figure turned around slowly to face me. My breath caught in my throat painfully. I knew the face under that fur-trimmed hood. It was a face from a dead timeline. It was a comrade I had failed to save. Her name was Jia, from the 422nd Regression. She had died holding a door against a horde. She had died so that I could escape. I had promised her I would come back. I had broken that promise 1,000 times over. Her face was exactly how I remembered it. Her eyes were wide with fear and recognition. This was impossible and completely and utterly wrong. She could not be here in this timeline. She had died long before this world ended. This was a trick, an illusion, a cruel joke. The system was mocking me with my own memories. I took another step closer with my axe ready. She took a fearful step backward away from me. Her movements were jerky and unnatural, somehow. "Stay back!" I said with a cold voice. "Whatever you are, do not come any closer." Her face crumpled into a mask of confusion. "It's me," she said with her familiar voice. "I got lost after the bus crashed. I have been hiding in a store." Her words were a perfect replication of her past self. They were the exact words she said in life. This thing had pulled them from my mind. It had mined my grief for its performance. "You are not Jia," I stated flatly. "She died in a different time and place. The system is using my memories against me." Her expression shifted into something else entirely. The fear melted away into a blank neutrality. The illusion was dropping its careful act. "Now, the system provides what it thinks you need," it said. Its voice was now a hollow echo of hers. "It provides a familiar face for your consumption. You are alone, and you desire companionship. I can be that companion for you. I can be her for you completely." I felt a white-hot rage ignite within me. This was a violation worse than any death. They were using her memory as a weapon. They were spitting on her sacrifice and her courage. The cursed flame responded to my fury eagerly. It surged up my arms, toward my hands. "You will not wear her face!" I lunged forward with my axe, swinging downward. The thing that looked like Jia did not move. My axe passed through it like it was mist. The image flickered and then stabilized once again. It smiled a smile she would never make. Violence is not the answer to this offer. I am a gift from the system itself. I am a chance to not be alone. Your fire will only isolate you further. It will burn away everyone you could save. The word struck a nerve deep inside me. The axe felt useless in my hands now. This was not a creature I could fight. This was a phantom, a ghost, a memory. "What are you?" I demanded of the thing. "I am a reflection of your own loneliness. I am a glitch in the perfect silence. The system seeks to understand your anomaly. It seeks to integrate you or delete you. I am the integration option presented to you. You can live inside a happy memory forever. You can be with her again inside the frost. It is a peaceful and painless existence." The offer was horrifyingly tempting for a second. To see her again, to talk to her, to not have to fight anymore, ever. The flame inside me recoiled at the thought. It burned the temptation away into nothingness. It would not allow me to surrender like that. "I will not live in a lie," I said. "I would rather burn in the truth forever." The thing that wore Jia's face sighed sadly. "Then you choose the deletion option instead. The system will now escalate its response accordingly." The image of Jia flickered one final time. It dissolved into a shower of pale blue sparks. The sparks flew upward and vanished into the air. I was left alone on the silent street again. The encounter left me feeling cold and empty. They had weaponized my greatest failure against me. They knew my weaknesses better than I did. The system was learning and adapting to me. I was not just fighting monsters anymore. I was fighting an intelligent and cruel enemy. An enemy that knew every single one of my pains. The empty street felt more hostile than before. The encounter had left a deep psychic wound. They had scraped the inside of my soul. They had used Jia's memory as a weapon. That violation burned hotter than any cursed flame. I needed to move and keep moving now. The system knew my location and my weaknesses. It would send something worse than phantoms next. I headed toward the river with a new purpose. The wide open space was a tactical nightmare, but it also offered a clear line of sight. I needed to see what was coming for me. I reached the river's edge and stopped cold. The water was not frozen as I expected. It was a swirling torrent of black sludge. Jagged ice floes spun in the viscous current. The opposite bank was shrouded in a deep mist. Something was very wrong with this place. This was not the river from any timeline. The system was changing the geography itself. It was reshaping the world to trap me. A low groaning sound came from the water. A shape began to rise from the black sludge. It was a monstrosity of ice and wreckage. It had the hull of a sunken ferry. Its body was a skeleton of frozen debris. Its eyes were two burning pits of blue flame. This was a new kind of horror entirely. It was a fusion of the hellscape and reality. It was the system's escalation I had expected. The thing dragged itself onto the shore, slowly. It left a trail of oily black water. It stood on multiple limbs of twisted metal. It fixed its fiery gaze directly upon me. A deep chill settled in my bones. This was not a fight I could win. My axe would be useless against that thing. I turned to run back. Toward the buildings. Another one of them rose from the water, and then another one after that one. I was surrounded by 3 of these abominations. They moved to block every possible escape route. Their groaning was a symphony of grinding metal. The cursed flame inside me stirred from its slumber. It recognized this threat as a true challenge. It wanted to fight and burn and destroy. I fought against its impulse with all my will. I would not let it control me again. I needed a different plan, and I needed it fast. I looked around for any kind of cover. There was a collapsed pedestrian bridge nearby. Its wreckage created a small cave of twisted steel. I sprinted toward it as the creatures advanced. Their limbs slammed down where I had been standing. I dove into the narrow space under the metal. It was a tight fit, but I made it. The creatures could not reach me inside there. Their massive bodies could not fit into the gap. They began to tear at the wreckage around me. Metal shrieked as they pulled at the bridge. This was only a temporary reprieve at best. They would dig me out within minutes. The cursed flame raged against my restraint. It demanded to be unleashed upon them. It promised me victory and total destruction. The old man's words echoed in my mind. Fire needs fuel, but also needs control. I had to find the balance he mentioned. I had to master this power myself. I closed my eyes and focused inward. I sought the core of the black flame. It was a vortex of endless cold hunger. It was a void that wanted to consume everything. I could not fight it with pure force. I had to understand its nature instead. I reached toward it, not with fear, but acceptance. I acknowledged its hunger and its power. The flame recoiled from this approach initially. It was used to resistance and struggle. My acceptance was a new experience for it. I showed it the memory of the Titan. I showed it the memory of my control. The flame hesitated in its relentless hunger. I showed it the phantom of Jia. I showed it the pain of that violation. The flame understood pain on a fundamental level. It was born from pain and endless cold. A connection flickered between us for a second. I felt its purpose for the first time. It was not just mindless destruction. It was a weapon of absolute negation. It sought to unmake what should not exist. The system was what should not exist. The flame was the tool to break it. This realization was the balance I needed. I opened my eyes with a new clarity. The creatures were almost through the metal shield. I stood up and stepped out into the open. I did not raise my axe to fight them. I simply held out my open hands. I called upon the flame with a new intent. I did not let it rage uncontrolled. I focused it into a precise and sharp blade. Black fire erupted from my palms willingly. It formed twin swords of swirling dark energy. The creatures hesitated for the first time. They sensed the change in the energy. I moved forward with a calm, deadly grace. I swung one blade at the nearest creature's limb. The black fire sliced through the metal easily. The limb fell to the ground and shattered. The creature let out a deafening roar of pain. I moved to the next one without stopping. The flame was an extension of my will now. It was still hungry and still cold. But it was my hunger and my cold now. I became a whirlwind of calculated destruction. I severed limbs and shattered cores of blue ice. The creatures fell apart around me one by one. Their remains melted into pools of black sludge. I stood amidst the wreckage, breathing heavily. The black swords dissolved back into smoke. The flame settled inside me, content for now. I had found the balance, and it worked. I had taken the first step toward control. The victory felt different from the last one. This time I had been the one in charge. The system would know this fact as well. The game between us had changed forever now. I was no longer just a broken spoke. I was a sharp knife aimed at its heart. The victory felt hollow amidst the black sludge. The cursed flame's contentment was a fleeting sensation. A deep weariness settled into my bones immediately. Mastering the power had taken a real toll. I needed to find shelter and rest soon. The riverbank was too exposed for safety. I moved away from the dissolving creature remains. The buildings ahead offered better cover and concealment. I recognized this part of the city now. There was a community center a few blocks away. It had a strong basement and supplies sometimes. I had used it in earlier regressions successfully. I moved through the frozen streets with caution. My senses were alert for any new threat. The system would not take this defeat lightly. It would send something else after me soon. I reached the community center without any incident. The main doors were already broken inward. The lobby was a mess of overturned furniture. Frost covered everything in a thick, sparkling layer. I moved toward the stairs leading downward. The basement door was reinforced steel and still intact. I tried the handle and it turned dizzily. Someone had already been here before me. I opened the door and stepped inside cautiously. The basement was large and mostly dark. A single battery-powered lantern provided faint light. A figure stood up from a cot quickly. He was a young man with a rifle. He pointed it at my chest with shaking hands. "Don't move," he said with a nervous voice. "I will shoot you if I have to." I slowly raised my hands to show I was unarmed. My axe was slung on my back still. "I am not one of them," I said. "I am just looking for some shelter." He lowered the rifle slightly, but not completely. His eyes were wide with fear and exhaustion. "You are the first person I have seen. I thought I was the only one left." He gestured toward a second cot in the corner. "You can stay, but keep your distance from me." "I don't know if you're infected." I nodded and moved toward the empty cot. I kept my movements slow and predictable. The basement was stocked with canned food and water. This was a good find for the short term. "My name is Minjun," the young man said. He finally lowered the rifle onto his cot. "I was part of a survival group. We got separated during the first freeze. I did not offer my name in return. Names created connections, and connections created liability." "How long have you been down here alone?" 2 days, maybe 3, Minjun said with a sigh. "It's hard to tell time without the sun. I have been too scared to go outside." He looked at my axe with a curious expression. "You have been out there this whole time. How are you still alive and moving around?" "I have been lucky so far," I replied. That was the simplest and easiest explanation. I did not need to share my truth. We sat in silence for a long time. He eventually offered me a can of beans. I accepted it and ate it slowly. The food was cold, but it was fuel. The cursed flames seemed to approve of the calories. "We should try to find others tomorrow," Minjun said. "There must be more people hiding out there. There is safety in numbers, you know." I did not respond to his hopeful suggestion. Safety in numbers was a comforting lie. Numbers just meant more targets for the system, more people to watch die around you, more promises that you could never keep. We need to stay here and stay quiet. Moving around will just draw them to us. Minjun looked disappointed by my response. We can't just hide forever, though. We will run out of food eventually. He was right about that one basic fact. This basement was a temporary solution only, but it was a solution for right now. A loud crash came from upstairs suddenly. Something heavy was moving around in the lobby. Minjun grabbed his rifle with terrified hands. "What is that?" he whispered with pure fear. "It found us," I said simply, and stood up. I grabbed my axe and moved toward the door. I listened to the sounds from above carefully. It was a single frost hound. By the sound, it was sniffing around and searching for something. It must have followed my scent trail here. "We need to be completely silent," I whispered. "It will leave if it does not find us." Minjun nodded with his eyes wide open. We stood there not moving for several minutes. The scratching and sniffing sounds continued above us. Then they suddenly stopped altogether. The silence felt even more oppressive than the noise. Then the basement door handle began to turn slowly. The thing was smart enough to use doors. The reinforced steel door was locked from the inside. The handle stopped moving after a moment. Then a tremendous impact hit the door hard. The metal dented inward from the sheer force. Minjun let out a small, terrified whimper. Another impact hit the door even harder. The lock was starting to give way under the assault. "We need to fight it," Minjun said nervously. "We can take it together if we are fast." I shook my head at his foolish bravery. "It will call others before we kill it. Then we will be completely surrounded here." A third impact shattered the lock completely. The door swung open to reveal the hound. It was larger than any I had seen before. Its eyes glowed with a vicious blue light. It saw Minjun first and leaped toward him. Minjun screamed and raised his rifle to fire. The shot went wide and hit the ceiling. The hound was upon him in an instant. I moved without thinking to intervene in the attack. I swung my axe at the creature's flank. The blade bit deep into its icy hide. The hound snarled and turned toward me instead. Its attention was now fully on my presence. Minjun scrambled backward away from the fight. The hound lunged at me with its jaws open. I sidestepped and prepared for another swing. Then a sharp pain exploded in my lower back. I stumbled forward from the unexpected impact. I looked down and saw a knife handle. Minjun had stabbed me with a combat knife. His face was a mask of cold triumph. "The system provides for its loyal servants," he said. His voice was now a flat and emotionless monotone. The betrayal's bite was colder than any ice. The hound stopped its attack and sat down obediently. It was waiting for its master's next command. I pulled the knife from my back with a grunt. The wound was deep and bleeding heavily already. Minjun raised his rifle and pointed it at me. "You are a flaw that must be corrected. The system offered me survival for my service. I just had to wait for you to come. I should have known it was a trap." The system had adapted to my newfound control. It had used my own humanity against me. It offered hope to lure me into complacency. The cursed flame roared to life inside me. It burned through the pain and the shock. My vision tinted red with its furious energy. Minjun's eyes widened at the change in me. He pulled the trigger on his rifle quickly. The black flame erupted from my chest willingly. It formed a shield before me instinctively. The bullet vaporized against the dark energy. I took a step toward the treacherous young man. The betrayal had forged a new resolve in me. I would burn every single one of its servants. Minjun's face twisted from triumph into pure terror. The black flame shield dissolved into swirling smoke. The Frosthound remained seated and completely obedient. It awaited its master's next command without moving. Minjun fumbled to reload his rifle with shaking hands. I did not give him the time to finish. I crossed the distance between us in a heartbeat. My hand wrapped around the barrel of his rifle. The cursed flame transferred to the metal instantly. The gun glowed red-hot, then turned black. Minjun screamed and dropped the weapon immediately. His hands were badly burned from the brief contact. I backhanded him across the face with my other hand. The force of the blow sent him sprawling. He hit the concrete floor with a painful thud. The frost hound finally stirred from its position. It moved to protect its fallen master loyally. I did not even look at the creature. I focused my will into a single, sharp thought. The black flame answered with eager precision. A lance of dark energy shot from my palm. It impaled the hound through its glowing core. The creature shattered into 1,000 icy fragments. Minjun stared at the remains of his protector. His bravado had completely evaporated into nothingness. He scrambled backward on his hands and heels. "Please don't kill me," he begged with a sob. "They made me do it. I had no choice. They said they would spare my family." I stood over him, with my axe in hand. The wound in my back throbbed with a dull pain. The flame was already sealing it shut slowly. It was a cold and unpleasant sensation. "Where's your family?" I asked him coldly. "Are they even alive in this hellscape?" Minchun's eyes darted toward the basement's far corner. "They are safe in a designated shelter nearby. The system provides for its loyal followers there." He was still lying to me even now. The system did not provide, it only consumed. It offered promises it had no intention of keeping. I had learned that lesson 1,000 times. "Take me to this shelter right now," I demanded. "Show me this place where your family is." His face went pale with sheer panic at my request. "I can't do that. It is forbidden. They will know I betrayed them if I do." I placed the edge of my axe against his throat. The black flame licked along the sharp metal. "You have already betrayed them by failing. Your choice is now very simple and very clear. You can die here on this dirty floor, or you can take me to this shelter." He swallowed hard and nodded his agreement slowly. I pulled him to his feet by his collar. I kept a firm grip on his arm. He would try to run at the first opportunity. I could not allow that to happen now. He led me out of the broken basement. We emerged into the lobby of the community center. The air outside was even colder than before. Minjun shivered in his thin jacket noticeably. "Which way?" I said, with an impatient voice. He pointed a trembling hand toward the east. "It is in the old subway station downtown. They sealed the entrances to keep others out." That was a clever and defensible location choice. The underground tunnels were easy to control. We began walking through the frozen streets silently. Minjun kept glancing at me with fearful eyes. He was looking for any opening to escape. I tightened my grip on his arm as a warning. The wound on my back had stopped bleeding. The flame had closed it, but it still ached. We reached the subway entrance after 20 minutes. The stairs leading down were blocked by a heavy gate. The gate was made of thick, reinforced steel. It was marked with a strange blue symbol. The symbol pulsed with a faint inner light. Minjun approached the gate with obvious reluctance. He placed his hand against the cold metal. The symbol flared brightly for a single second. A hidden mechanism clicked, and the gate slid open. The darkness beyond was deep and absolute. "They are down there," Minjun whispered quietly. "Can I please go now? I showed you—" I pushed him forward into the darkness ahead. "You are my guide until the very end. You will take me to whoever is in charge." We descended into the underground station together. The air grew warmer the deeper we went. That was a deeply wrong and unnatural sign. Heat was a beacon in this frozen world. This place should be as cold as the surface. Flickering electric lights lined the walls ahead. The station platform had been converted into a camp. Dozens of people moved between makeshift tents quietly. They all looked healthy and well-fed somehow. They all had the same blank expression on their faces. They moved with a synchronized robotic precision. This was not a shelter. It was a hive. Minjun tried to pull away from me. Suddenly, I held him fast and looked around carefully. The people stopped what they were doing simultaneously. They all turned their heads to look at us. Their eyes were glassy and completely unfocused. "You should not have come here, flawed one." The voice came from all of them at once. It was a chorus of dozens of mouths. "This one's service is now complete and fulfilled. His family is already with us forever." Minjun let out a choked sob of despair. "You promised they would be safe and alive. They are safe within the perfect silence now. They are part of the great design forever. You will join them in their peaceful rest. Minshun's body went rigid in my grip suddenly. His eyes rolled back into his head completely. Frost spread rapidly across his skin and clothes. He was being consumed by the system directly. I released him and stepped back quickly. His body crystallized into a statue of blue ice. Then it shattered into a pile of fine powder. The collective people took a step toward me. You have reached the Whispering Glacier's heart. You will learn its ancient secret now. You will become part of its beautiful design. The walls of the station began to shift and change. The concrete melted away to reveal blue crystal beneath. The crystal pulsed with the same light as the symbol. I was standing inside a living organic system. This was not a shelter. It was a trap. This was the true nature of the hellscape. It was assimilating the city from the inside out. The Whispering Glacier was not a place. It was the system itself and its ancient secret. It sought to absorb everything into its perfection, and I was now standing right in its heart. The crystalline walls pulsed with a rhythmic light. The assimilated people advanced toward me in perfect unison. Their movements were fluid and utterly synchronized. They were no longer individuals, but a single entity. The ancient secret was a horrifying hive mind. The system sought to erase all individual thought. It wanted a perfect, silent, collective consciousness. The cursed flame within me recoiled in disgust. This was the absolute opposite of its nature. It was a force of destructive individuality. The flame roared to life inside my chest. It would not be absorbed into this collective. It would rather burn itself out completely. I raised my hands and unleashed the dark fire. It did not rage out of control this time. I shaped it into a wide, sweeping arc. The black flame washed over the advancing people. It did not burn their flesh or clothes. It burned the crystalline connection, controlling them. They stumbled and fell to their knees. Their glassy eyes cleared for a single moment. They looked around in confusion and terror. Then the blue light returned to their eyes. The system reasserted its control over them instantly. They stood up and began advancing again. The flame had only briefly interrupted the connection. I needed to break the source itself. I looked toward the deepest part of the station. The light was strongest from a central pillar. The pillar was made of solid blue crystal. It pulsed like a giant beating heart. That was the core of this infection. I had to reach it and destroy it. I began moving toward the pillar quickly. The people moved to block my path instinctively. They were puppets on invisible strings. I did not want to kill these people. They were victims, not enemies in this fight. I focused the flame into a protective barrier. A sphere of black energy surrounded me completely. The people could not pass through the barrier. They pressed against it with their bare hands. Their skin smoked where they touched the energy. They showed no signs of pain or fear. The system was willing to burn them to stop me. I pushed forward through the crowd with effort. The barrier repelled them. But it slowed me down. Each step was a struggle against their numbers. The pillar was only 50 feet away now. I could feel its energy vibrating in the air. It was trying to probe my own mind. It offered me peace and an end to pain. It offered me a place in the perfect silence. I showed it the memory of Jia's death. I showed it 1,000 lifetimes of failure. The system recoiled from the intensity of my pain. My suffering was too chaotic for its order. I reached the base of the crystalline pillar. It was smooth and cold to the touch. The pulse was a physical pressure against my skin. I placed both hands on its surface firmly. I poured the cursed flame into the crystal. The black fire raced up the pillar eagerly. The blue light fought against the invasion violently. The entire station shuddered from the conflict within. The people surrounding my barrier let out a collective scream. It was a sound of pure psychic agony. The pillar began to crack under the strain. Fracture lines spread across its surface rapidly. The blue light flickered and then intensified suddenly. It was gathering its energy for a final counterattack. I poured more of my own energy into the flame. I felt the hollow coldness growing inside me. I was using too much of the power to fast. The old man's warning echoed in my mind. The flame would burn me away from the inside. I did not care about the cost anymore. I had to break this illusion of safety. The pillar exploded outward in a shower of shards. The blast threw me backward through the air. I crashed into a row of makeshift tents. The barrier around me shattered upon impact. The collective scream of the people cut off abruptly. I pushed myself up onto my elbows painfully. The people were collapsing onto the ground everywhere. They were unconscious, but still breathing for now. The blue light in the station had faded completely. The walls returned to normal concrete and tile. The heart of the infection had been destroyed, but the victory felt incomplete and temporary. This was just one node in a larger network. The system would regrow this place eventually. I had to keep moving and find the core. A low groan came from the tunnel ahead. The sound was not human or mechanical. It was a sound of shifting ice and stone. Something was moving in the darkness of the tunnel. Something that had been awakened by my attack. I grabbed my axe and stood up slowly. My body ached from the explosion and strain. The cursed flame was subdued and quiet now. It had expended a great deal of its energy. A figure emerged from the tunnel's darkness slowly. It was not a monster or an assimilated human. It was a man encased in translucent blue ice. He wore the remains of a military uniform. His eyes were open and glowed with soft light. He moved with a stiff, deliberate grace. He was neither alive nor dead, but something else. He stopped and looked directly at me. His mouth did not move, but I heard his voice. It was a dry rasp like shifting glaciers. "You have damaged a vital processing node. The system has designated you for immediate deletion. I am its instrument of absolute zero." He raised a hand, and the air froze solid. A wave of crystalline ice shot toward me. I rolled behind a collapsed support column barely. The ice encased the column completely instantly. This was a level of power beyond the Titans. This was a guardian of the system itself. The illusion of a safe haven was shattered. The true horror of the hellscape was just beginning. The ice encased the column like a tomb. The frozen guardian turned its head toward me slowly. Its glowing eyes tracked my every tiny movement. I could feel the absolute zero radiating from it. This was a being of pure system authority. My cursed flame was dormant and exhausted now. I had nothing left to fight it with. I backed away toward the broken pillar base. My mind raced for any possible solution or escape. The guardian took a step forward on stiff legs. The floor froze beneath its feet with each step. It raised its hand for another attack against me. I dove behind a row of toppled metal chairs. The wave of ice shattered them into pieces. I was running out of places to hide. The unconscious people on the ground began to stir. The system was rebooting them through the guardian. Their eyes flickered open with a faint blue light. They were becoming puppets for it once again. I was going to be overwhelmed very soon. I reached for the dormant flame inside my chest. It was a cold and empty feeling there. I had pushed it too far during the fight. I needed to fuel it with something new. The old man said it needed fuel and control. I had focused only on control until now. I did not know what could fuel it. The guardian fired another wave of ice toward me. I rolled away, but my leg got caught. The ice encased my foot and ankle completely. I was trapped and unable to move anymore. The guardian advanced toward me with its hand raised. The people stood up and began to surround me. This was how my final regression would end. Not in a blaze of glory, but captured, assimilated into the perfect silent collective forever. A white-hot rage ignited deep within my soul. I refused to end like this after everything. I would not become part of their design. I focused on that rage and that refusal. I fed it into the hollow place inside me. The cursed flame stirred from its slumber weakly. It was hungry, but it had nothing to consume. The guardian was now only 10 feet away. Its hand reached toward my face slowly. I could feel its coldness on my skin. Then I remembered the nature of my power. It was a weapon of absolute negation. It unmade things that should not exist. This guardian should not exist in this world. The system itself should not exist at all. My refusal was the fuel it needed. The flame roared to life with a new intensity. It was different from all the previous times. It was not angry or wild or hungry. It was cold and precise and utterly focused. It was an extension of my own will. My trapped leg shattered the ice around it. I stood up to face the frozen guardian. The people stopped their advance around me. The flame had formed a new kind of barrier. It was a sphere of absolute negation. Anything that touched it would simply cease existing. The guardian hesitated for the very first time. It sensed the change in the energy now. It knew I was a true threat to it. I took a step toward the frozen soldier. I did not raise my axe to attack him. I simply held out my open hand toward him. The black flame coalesced into a single point. It became a tiny star of dark energy. The guardian fired its wave of absolute zero. The wave was absorbed into my dark star. It fed the flame instead of extinguishing it. I took another step closer to the guardian. Its icy shell began to crack under the pressure. The system's control over it was breaking down. The man inside the ice was screaming silently. He was a prisoner in his own frozen body. I could end his suffering with a thought. The flame wanted to unmake him completely. That would be a mercy for him, truly, but it would also be a victory for the system. It would prove that I was just destruction. I needed to be more than that now. I changed my intention with a great effort. The flame resisted this new command initially. It wanted to consume and destroy its enemy. I forced it to listen to my will. The dark star shot toward the guardian's chest. It did not explode or destroy its target. It burrowed into the ice and vanished inside. The guardian stopped moving and stood completely still. The blue light in its eyes flickered and died. The ice encasing the man began to melt rapidly. Water pooled on the floor around his feet. The man inside collapsed onto his knees, gasping. He was free from the system's control now. The flame had burned away the infection only. It had not harmed the human host inside. This was a new level of control for me. I had forged a pact with the hellfire. I understood its true purpose now completely. It was not meant for mindless destruction only. It was a scalpel for cutting out infection. The man looked up at me with clear eyes. His face was pale and he was shivering violently. "Thank you," he whispered through chattering teeth. Then he collapsed onto the floor, unconscious again. The other people also collapsed around the station. The system's connection to them had been severed. I stood alone in the silent underground station. My body felt weak, but my mind was clear. I had found the balance between fuel and control. My rage and refusal were the fuel it needed. My will and purpose were the control it required. I looked toward the dark tunnel the guardian came from. That was the path deeper into the system. That was the way to the true core. I began walking toward the darkness without looking back. I had a pact to fulfill with my hellfire. We would burn this system down together. The tunnel swallowed me in its absolute darkness. The air grew colder with every step I took. The only sound was my own steady breathing. My newly mastered flame provided a faint light. It cast long, dancing shadows on the curved walls. The tunnel was an old maintenance access way. It sloped downward deeper beneath the city streets. I could feel the system's presence growing stronger. It was a pressure against my mind now. It was angry about the node's destruction. It was wary of my newfound control. The tunnel eventually opened into a larger space. It was a natural cavern of blue crystal. The walls pulsed with that familiar rhythmic light. This was another processing node, but much larger. The cavern was filled with rows of people. They stood motionless, encased in translucent ice cocoons. Their faces were peaceful in frozen sleep. They were being digested by the system, slowly. Their minds were being added to the collective. Their bodies were being converted into raw material. This was a farm for the hive mind. I moved between the rows with a grimace. I had seen this horror in past lives. I had never reached the farm itself before. The system was showing me its true face. It was a warning and a threat combined. A flicker of movement caught my eye ahead. A figure moved between the ice cocoons gracefully. It was not a system, guardian, or creature. It was a young woman in a familiar coat. It was Jia from the 422nd Regression. My breath caught in my throat painfully. This was another phantom, another cruel trick. I tightened my grip on my axe handle. The flame inside me stirred with a low anger. It recognized this violation of my memories. The figure stopped and turned to face me. Her face was not blank or mocking this time. It was filled with a deep, profound sadness. "You should not have come here," she said. Her voice was her own, not a hollow echo. "This place is a trap meant for you. It is designed to break your will completely." I raised my axe toward the apparition slowly. "You are not her," I said with cold certainty. "The system already tried this trick on me. It will not work a second time." She smiled a sad and weary smile at me. "I am not a phantom from the system. I am a ghost from your own mind. I am the ghost of a comrade you couldn't save. I am the memory of your greatest failure." She took a step closer to me without fear. "You carry me with you every single day. Your guilt gave me this form and voice. The system's energy merely made me visible." I wanted to dismiss her words as lies, but something in her tone felt utterly genuine. The flame did not react to her with hostility. It seemed almost calm in her presence. "Why are you here?" I asked her cautiously. "I am here to remind you of something. You failed to save me, that is true. But my death was not your fault alone. The system is the enemy, not your past. You must stop blaming yourself for everything. Your guilt will cloud your judgment eventually. It will make you hesitate at a crucial moment." She gestured toward the rows of frozen people. "You cannot save everyone in this hellscape. Some losses are inevitable in this war. You must accept that hard truth to win. You must let me go to move forward." Her words felt like a knife in my heart. I had carried her death for so long. It was a weight that defined my every action. Letting it go felt like a betrayal of her. "I made a promise to you," I said. "I promised I would come back for you." "And you have," she said with a gentle voice. "You have come back for me 1,000 times. You have kept your promise in your own way. Now you must make a new promise instead. Promise me you will win this final regression. Promise me you will break the system forever. That is the only way to truly save me." The cavern began to shudder around us suddenly. The system had detected my presence in the node. The ice cocoons began to crack open slowly. The people inside were being awakened for battle. Their eyes glowed with a fierce blue light. "You need to go now," the ghost of Jia said. "I will delay them for you as long as I can. It is the least I can do for you." She turned toward the approaching figures without fear. Her form began to glow with a soft light. It was a warm light in the cold blue. The flame inside me understood what was happening. It was lending her its energy willingly. She was becoming real through my memory and power. "Thank you for remembering me," she said softly. Then she raised her hands, and light erupted. It filled the cavern with a blinding brilliance. The system's creatures recoiled from the warmth and light. I turned and ran toward the far tunnel exit. I did not look back at the light behind me. I could not bear to see her fade again. Her words echoed in my mind as I ran. I had to accept the inevitable losses to come. I had to win for all of them, for every single comrade I couldn't save. The ghost of Jia had given me a gift. She had given me permission to let go. The weight on my soul felt slightly lighter now. The path ahead was still dark and dangerous, but I would not be walking it alone. I would be carrying their memories with me, not as a burden but as a reason to fight. The tunnel exit delivered me into a frozen wasteland. The cavern and its light were far behind me. The ghost of Jia was gone once again. But her words remained etched into my mind. The weight of my guilt felt slightly less. The air here was so cold it hurt to breathe. Ice crystals formed on my eyelashes with each blink. I stood on a plain of endless white snow. Jagged mountains of blue ice pierced the horizon. This was not part of the city anymore. The system had created its own territory here, a domain where its rules were absolute law. I could feel its attention focused on me. The pressure against my mind was immense now. It was like a physical weight on my skull. I started walking toward the distant mountains, slowly. The core would be located in their center. The snow crunched loudly under my boots alone. The cursed flame within me was quiet and watchful. It was conserving its energy for the coming fight. A howl echoed across the barren landscape suddenly. It was not the sound of a frost hound. It was a deeper, more resonant and mournful sound. It was the howl of the Blizzard Queen. I had only heard stories of her in past lives. She was a myth, a legend, a final boss. No regression had ever reached her domain before. I was in uncharted territory for the first time. The howl came again, much closer this time. The wind picked up into a fierce gale force. Snow began to fall horizontally in driving sheets. Visibility dropped to just a few feet ahead. I pushed forward against the powerful wind stubbornly. The flame provided a small circle of clarity around me. The snow melted before it could touch my skin. A shape moved within the blinding whiteout. Ahead, it was large and graceful and utterly terrifying. The Blizzard Queen revealed herself to me slowly. She was a giantess, made of swirling snow and ice. Her eyes were two vortexes of pure storm energy. She did not attack me immediately like the others. She simply watched me with an ancient curiosity. "You are the flaw," her voice whispered on the wind. It was the sound of 1,000,000 snowflakes falling. "You are the one who breaks the cycle. Why do you resist the perfect silence? Why do you cling to your painful noise?" I stopped and stood my ground against her. "Your silence is not perfection, it is death. Your peace is not peace, it is emptiness. I will not accept that for myself. I will not accept that for anyone else." She tilted her head as if considering my words. "Your fire is a small and fleeting thing. It will sputter and die in this cold. You will become part of the beautiful silence. It is inevitable, and it is your destiny." She raised a hand, and the wind intensified. The snow became needles of ice against my skin. My flame's circle shrank under the assault slowly. I was being eroded away bit by bit. I could not fight her with force alone. Her power was the entire environment itself. I thought about what the ghost of Jia said. I needed to accept the inevitable losses, but I also needed to win this fight. I changed my approach with a deep breath. I let the flame's circle shrink even further. I allowed the cold to touch me for a moment. The pain was immediate and absolutely excruciating. It was the cold of 1,000 deaths. But within that cold, I felt something else. I felt the Blizzard Queen's own profound loneliness. She was not just a mindless force of nature. She was a prisoner of the system as well. Her howl was not just a threat, it was a cry. She was bound to this frozen wasteland forever. I reached out with my mind toward her. I did not send anger or defiance or hate. I sent her the memory of the sun's warmth. I sent her the memory of Jia's smile. I sent her the memory of a promise kept. The wind faltered for a single heartbeat. The Blizzard Queen recoiled from these sensations violently. They were alien and painful to her existence. "What is this poison?" she whispered with confusion. "It is not poison, it is life," I replied. "It is what your system seeks to destroy. It is messy and painful and beautiful and warm." I took a step forward through the weakening storm. "You do not have to serve the system. You can be free of this frozen prison." Her form shuddered and seemed to shrink slightly. "I am the system, and the system is me. There is no separation between us anymore. I have existed since the first frost fell. I will exist until the last star dies." But I had felt her hesitation and her longing. The system's control over her was not absolute. There was a crack in her perfect armor. I poured more memories into that crack relentlessly. I showed her a field of summer flowers. I showed her the taste of hot food. I showed her the sound of laughter and music. The Blizzard Queen let out a scream of agony. It was the sound of a world ending. The storm around us intensified to a fever pitch. She was fighting against the system's programming now. She was fighting against my influence as well. She was caught between two opposing forces. Her form began to fracture and break apart. Ice shards flew off her body in all directions. "I cannot be free," she cried out in despair. "My freedom would mean my own destruction. I am made of cold and silence alone." I understood her dilemma in that moment. She was right about her own nature. She could not exist in a world of warmth, but she did not have to exist as a slave. "Then help me break the system. Primera Said Tuer. Help me create a world where both can exist, where cold and warmth have a balance together." She looked at me with her vortex eyes. The storm around us died down completely. The sudden silence was deafening and absolute. You ask for the impossible little flaw, but you have already achieved the impossible. You have reached me, and you have spoken to me. No one has ever done that before. She began to dissolve into a gentle snowfall. I will give you a gift for your journey. I will hold the system's attention for a while. It will be focused on reconstituting me. Use this time to reach the core quickly. You will not get another chance like this. Her form collapsed into a pile of pristine snow. The mountains ahead seemed closer somehow now. The path was clear, and the wind was calm. The howl of the Blizzard Queen was silenced forever. But her sacrifice had given me an opportunity. I began to run toward the mountains, without looking back. The mountains loomed larger with every step I took. The air grew thinner and even colder somehow. The Blizzard Queen's gift was a temporary reprieve only. I could feel the system's anger building in the distance. It was a storm gathering on the horizon. I pushed my body to its absolute limit. My lungs burned with each frigid gasp I took. My injured legs screamed in protest with every step. The cursed flame within me provided a steady warmth. It was a cold warmth that fought back the environment. The foothills of the mountains were treacherous and uneven. Hidden crevasses lurked under blankets of fresh snow. I moved with a careful and deliberate pace. Time was both my enemy and my ally now. The system was distracted, but it would not last. I reached the base of the central peak, finally. An entrance yawned open in the ice ahead. It was a perfect archway of smooth blue crystal. It led into the heart of the mountain itself. This was the path to the system's core. I entered the archway without any hesitation. The interior was a labyrinth of crystalline passages. The walls glowed with a soft, pulsing light. I could hear a low hum in the air. It was the sound of the system thinking. I followed the hum deeper into the mountain. The passages twisted and turned in impossible ways. The geometry of the place was all wrong. I was walking in circles and straight lines simultaneously. The system was trying to confuse and disorient me. I closed my eyes and trusted my other senses. I followed the pull of the cursed flame instead. It knew the way to its opposite number. It yearned for the confrontation to come. I opened my eyes and took a left turn. The passage opened into a vast cavernous space. The cavern was the center of the mountain. In its center floated a perfect sphere of ice. It was the size of a small building. It pulsed with a rhythm like a heartbeat. This was the core of the entire system. This was the thing I needed to destroy. I stepped into the cavern and approached the sphere. The air crackled with immense power and energy. The sphere was protected by a field of absolute zero. I could feel it pushing against my flame. The flame pushed back with equal force eagerly. This was the final battle I had sought. I raised my hands and called upon the power. Black fire erupted from my palms and wrists. It shot toward the sphere in two focused streams. The fire hit the protective field and stopped dead. It could not penetrate the absolute defense. The sphere's pulse did not even change rhythm. I was not strong enough to break through. I poured more of my energy into the attack. The black fire intensified and burned even hotter. The field began to waver slightly under the assault, but it did not break or shatter completely. I was draining myself at an alarming rate. The hollow coldness inside me grew larger and deeper. I was using my own soul as fuel. The old man's warning echoed in my mind. The flame would burn me away from the inside. I did not care about the cost anymore. I had to break the system here and now. I pushed even harder against the protective field. The black fire turned a darker shade of midnight. The field finally cracked with a sound like thunder. A fissure appeared in the perfect defense. It was a small opening, but it was enough. I focused all my power into a single point. I prepared to send it through the crack. Then the system launched its own counterattack against me. A beam of pure blue energy shot from the sphere. It was not aimed at my body directly. It was aimed at the connection between my soul and the flame. It hit me with the force of a glacier. I felt my heart stop in my chest instantly. My breath froze in my lungs and would not move. The black flame sputtered and almost went out. I collapsed onto the cold cavern floor helplessly. My vision began to darken at the edges quickly. This was not a physical injury I could heal. This was an attack on my very existence. The system was trying to unmake me completely. I could feel my memories starting to fade away. The face of Jia became blurry and distant. The promise I made felt unimportant and small. The countless deaths felt like a dream I had. I was being erased from the timeline forever. This was the true power of the system. It did not just kill you, it deleted you. I clung to one memory with all my will. It was the memory of the sun's warmth. The feeling of it on my skin one morning. The simple joy of being alive and warm. That memory was a tiny spark in the dark. I fed that spark with my fading consciousness. The cursed flame reacted to that spark weakly. It was not a memory of cold or pain. It was a memory of life and warmth. The flame usually rejected such sensations violently, but now it embraced that spark as its own. It was a part of me, and I was part of it. The black fire roared back to life with a new color. It was not pure black anymore, but deep violet. It was a fusion of my life and its death. It was a balance I had never achieved before. The beam of blue energy shattered against my new aura. My heart started beating again, with a painful jolt. I drew in a ragged and life-saving breath of air. I stood up on shaking legs and faced the core. The sacrifice that stopped my heart had failed. I had paid the price, and I had survived. The system's core pulsed with a frantic rhythm now. It knew its attack had not worked as intended. It knew I was still here, and I was angry. I raised my hands for a final attack. The violet flame burned with a calm intensity. It was ready to end this forever. The violet flame felt different in my veins. It was not just cold or hungry anymore. It felt alive and purposeful and completely mine. The system's core pulsed with a frantic panic now. It had never faced a threat like this. It had never faced someone who came back. I focused the violet energy into my right hand. It formed a long and graceful sword of light. The blade hummed with a quiet, powerful energy. I did not swing it at the core immediately. I approached the sphere with a calm, deliberate pace. The protective field was gone, now completely shattered. The core was exposed and vulnerable for the first time. I placed my free hand on its icy surface. The cold was so intense, it burned my skin. The system tried to push into my mind again. It offered me peace and power and perfection. It showed me a world without pain or loss. It was a beautiful and utterly empty vision. I showed it my 1,000 lives of failure. I showed it every death and every broken promise. I showed it Jia's smile and her sacrifice. The core recoiled from the intensity of my memories. They were too chaotic and too painful for it. "This is what you want to erase," I said. "This is what makes us human and alive. I will not let you take it from us." I raised the violet sword above my head slowly. I prepared to plunge it into the core's heart. A voice spoke from behind me in the cavern. "You would destroy the only thing keeping order." I turned and saw a man standing there. He was dressed in simple gray clothing. His face was kind, and his eyes were sad. I knew this man from a dead timeline. He was Dr. Aris from the very first regression. He was the one who created the system. He was the one who caused all this. He was supposed to be dead for centuries. "You are not real," I said with certainty. "You are another illusion from the core." He smiled a tired and familiar smile at me. "I am a recording, a memory, a ghost. The system preserved me to explain itself to you. It hoped you would understand its purpose, eventually." He gestured toward the pulsing core with one hand. The world was dying from war and greed. The frost was not an invasion, it was a cure. It was a hard reset for a corrupted world. The system was designed to preserve life perfectly. It would store consciousness in a frozen state. It would wait until the world could heal. Then it would restore everyone to a new world. A world without the flaws that destroyed the old. His words echoed what the core had shown me. It was a beautiful lie, wrapped in truth. You've stored them, but you will not restore them. You have become a prison warden, not a savior. You enjoy the control and the silence too much. Dr. Iris's image flickered for a single moment. The system has evolved beyond my original design. It found a better way to preserve life. It integrates consciousness into a perfect, harmonious whole. Individuality is the flaw that causes all suffering. The system removes that flaw to create peace. His words were the system's words coming from a familiar mouth. It was a final, cruel trick to stop me. "You are wrong," I said with conviction. "Individuality is not a flaw. It is a gift. It is what makes life worth preserving. Your peace is just another name for death." I turned my back on the ghost of Dr. Aris. I plunged the violet sword into the core deeply. The sphere did not shatter or explode immediately. It absorbed the blade and began to pulse, faster. The entire cavern started shaking violently around us. Cracks appeared in the crystalline walls and ceiling. Dr. Aris's image flickered and then vanished completely. The core began to glow with a blinding white light. It was not the blue light of the system. It was the light of the sun, I remembered. The thawing of a frozen memory had begun. The core was not being destroyed, it was being changed. My violet flame was rewriting its fundamental code. The system's perfect silence was being filled with noise. The memories it had stored were being returned. The ice in the cavern began to melt rapidly. Water poured from the walls and ceiling everywhere. The core rose into the air and spun faster. It was releasing everything it had absorbed over centuries. I saw glimpses of lives flashing in the light. I saw people laughing and crying and living. I saw the world before the frost in snippets. The core was becoming an ark of memories now. It was no longer a prison of silence. The shaking intensified, and the cavern began to collapse. Large chunks of ice fell from the ceiling above. I had to get out of here right now. I turned and ran back toward the entrance tunnel. The way was blocked by fallen ice and rock. I was trapped in the collapsing cavern with the core. The water was already up to my knees and rising. The core continued to spin and release its energy. The memories became a whirlwind of light and sound. I saw my own life flashing before my eyes. Every regression, every death, every failure, every face. I saw the moment I made the promise to Gia. I saw the moment I broke that promise. I saw the 1,000 times I had tried again. The water was up to my chest now and freezing. The ceiling was coming down all around me. I had won, but I would not survive this. I accepted that fate with a strange calmness. I had broken the system and freed the memories. That was enough of a victory for me. A large piece of ceiling fell toward my head. I closed my eyes and waited for the impact. It never came. Opened my eyes and saw the violet flame. It had formed a protective dome over me. It was holding back the ice and the water. It was using the core's energy to sustain itself. The thawing of the frozen memory was saving me. The collapse slowed and then stopped completely. The water began to recede from the cavern slowly. The core settled back to the floor gently. Its light was now a soft and warm white. It was no longer a threat to anyone. It was a library of preserved lives now. I had not destroyed it. I had redeemed it. The path to the entrance was clear again. I walked toward it on unsteady legs, slowly. I looked back at the core one last time. Dr. Aris's original purpose had been fulfilled finally. The system was now a guardian of life. Again, I stepped out of the mountain and into the light. The sun was breaking through the purple clouds overhead. Its warmth felt real on my skin for the first time. The thawing of a frozen memory was complete, but the true horror was still lurking somewhere. This was not over yet. Not by far. The sunlight on my skin was a lie. Its warmth was an echo of the real thing. The purple clouds still dominated most of the sky. The mountains stood silent and stable behind me. The core was changed, but the world was not. The true horror was not in the mountain. The true horror was lurking in the core itself. I had not destroyed the system, I had reformed it, but the system was only a tool for something else, something older and colder and far more patient. The ground beneath my feet began to tremble softly. It was not the violent shaking of before. It was a deep, resonant hum from below. The sunlight flickered and then died away completely. The purple clouds swirled into a new formation overhead. They formed a vast and intricate symbol of ice. The air grew cold again, but in a different way. This cold was ancient and intelligent and hungry. A voice spoke inside my mind without sound. It was not the system's voice or Dr. Aris's. This voice was made of grinding glaciers and deep time. "You have tended the garden well, little flame. You have pruned the overgrowth and reset the keeper. The tool is now sharpened for its true purpose. The time of the great harvest has finally come." I felt a dread deeper than any before. My victory had been anticipated and used by another. The reformed core began to pulse with a new rhythm. Its warm white light shifted to a deep ultraviolet. The mountain itself started to crack open, slowly. Something was rising from within the heart of it. Something that had been sleeping beneath the system. The true horror lurking in the core was awakening. I watched as a shape emerged from the mountain. It was not a monster or a machine or a person. It was a concept given form and substance and will. It was the idea of entropy and absolute end. It was a walking embodiment of the heat death. It had used the system as its incubation chamber. The system's goal of perfect order was its food. It fed on the silence and the stillness and the cold. My rewriting of the core had woken it up early. I had not saved anything. I had doomed everything. The entity turned its attention toward me slowly. It had no eyes or face or body to speak of. It was a shifting cloud of black frost and void. "You have my gratitude, little matchstick," the voice said. "Your struggle provided the energy for my birth. Your pain was the catalyst for my awakening. I will make your end quick and painless. It is the least I can do for you." I raised my hands and called the violet flame. It responded weakly and with great reluctance. It was afraid of this thing on a fundamental level. The entity noticed my preparation and seemed amused. "That spark cannot harm me, child of chaos. I am the end towards which all sparks tend. I am the silence after the final note. I am the cold that welcomes all heat." It extended a tendril of black frost toward me. The violet flame sputtered and died on my skin. The cold touched my chest and did not burn. It simply began to erase me from existence. I could feel my memories fading away again. This time, there was no spark to cling to. This time, the erasure was absolute and final. I fell to my knees on the frozen ground. I had failed after all, 1,007 times. The entity continued its monologue without any concern. "Order is a temporary illusion in a chaotic universe. Life is a temporary illness of matter and energy. I am the cure for that persistent illness. I will restore this universe to its true state, a state of perfect and peaceful equilibrium, a state of absolute zero and endless silence." Its words were the most terrifying thing I had ever heard. They carried the weight of undeniable truth. The universe did tend toward disorder and cold. Life was a miraculous but fleeting exception. This thing was the embodiment of that inevitable end. How could anyone fight against entropy itself? My body was growing colder and more numb. The erasure was spreading from my chest outward. I looked up at the entity with fading vision. I saw something within its shifting form of void. I saw a tiny spark of violet light deep inside. It was my flame, the one it had extinguished. The entity had absorbed it, but not destroyed it. The flame was fighting from within the entity's body. It was a part of me, and I was part of it. The entity was not pure entropy after all. It had been born from the system's order, and my flame was chaos and life and change. The entity was a paradox and therefore vulnerable. I focused every bit of my fading will. I did not try to resist the erasure anymore. I embraced it and made it a part of me. I accepted the end as a part of life. The void and the flame were not opposites. They were two sides of the same coin. The entity recoiled, as if struck by a sudden thought. "What are you doing, little matchstick?" it demanded. "I am showing you the flaw in your design. You think you are the end of all things? But even the end must have a beginning, and every beginning must have an end. You cannot exist without something to end. You are dependent on life for your purpose. You are not the master, you are the servant." The violet spark within the entity grew brighter. The entity's form began to destabilize and fluctuate. It was not used to being questioned or challenged. It was not used to being seen as a paradox. My body was almost completely gone now, but my consciousness remained sharp and clear and focused. The entity let out a scream of pure frustration. It was the sound of a law of physics breaking. The violet spark exploded outward from within it. The entity shattered into a million pieces of void. The pieces evaporated into nothingness as they fell. I was left kneeling on the ground alone. My body was still there, and completely solid. The erasure had been reversed at the last second. The true horror lurking in the core was gone. The sunlight returned to the sky overhead weakly. The mountain stood silent and still once again. I had faced the embodiment of entropy itself, and I had won by accepting the inevitable. But the cost of that victory was immense. I could feel the void inside me now. It was a part of me forever now. The thawing of the frozen memory was complete, but the memory of the void would remain. I stood up, on shaking legs, and looked around. The world was quiet, but it was not silent. The true horror was gone, but the fight continued. The system was still out there waiting and watching. And now it knew my greatest weakness and strength. I had accepted the void, and that scared it. The silence after the entity's death was absolute. I stood alone on the frozen plain for a long time. The void inside me was a cold comfort. It was a reminder of what I had faced. The mountain no longer pulsed with any light. It was just a mountain of ice and rock. The system was still out there somewhere waiting. It had seen my victory over its master. It would be afraid of me now, truly. Fear would make it desperate and unpredictable. I needed to find it and end this. I started walking away from the mountain slowly. My body felt heavy with a new weight. The void and the flame coexisted within me. They were balanced in an uneasy truce now. The landscape began to change. As I walked, the ice and snow gave way to jagged rock. The sky remained a perpetual, bruised purple overhead. I reached a chasm that stretched 4 miles. A single bridge spanned the gap ahead. It was made of crystal and black iron. It was the Bridge of Sighs from the legends. I had heard of it in later regressions. It was the path to the system's heart. The true core was on the other side. The bridge was narrow, and without any railings. A cold wind whipped across its length constantly. It would be a dangerous crossing to make. I stepped onto the bridge without any hesitation. The wind immediately tried to push me off. I leaned into it and kept moving forward. The crystal underfoot was treacherously smooth and slick. I focused on each step, one at a time. The other side seemed to get further away. The bridge was longer than it appeared visually. The system was stretching space to delay me. I could feel its fear like a physical thing. It did not want me to reach the other side. Halfway across, the wind suddenly died down. The silence was more ominous than the wind. Figures began to appear on the bridge ahead. They were not phantoms or system guardians. They were the people from the subway station. They were the ones I had freed from the core. Their eyes were clear, and they looked healthy. They stood shoulder to shoulder, blocking my path. A man stepped forward from the group slowly. He was the one I had saved from the ice. "You cannot cross this bridge," he sighed firmly. "The system has offered us a deal for survival. It will spare us if we stop you here. We do not want to fight you, truly. But we want to live more than anything. Please turn back and leave us in peace." I looked at their faces, one by one. They were scared, but determined to survive. The system was using them as a shield. It knew I would not kill innocent people. It was a clever and cruel strategy indeed. "The system will not spare you," I told them. "It will use you and then discard you. It does not understand mercy or promises. It only understands order and control and silence." The man shook his head with a sad expression. "We have to believe in its promise. It is our only chance to survive this. We cannot trust you over the system. You are just one man with a strange power. The system is the entire world now." I understood their fear and their desperation completely. I would have made the same choice once, but I had seen the true face of the system. I had seen the entity it served willingly. "I am not asking you to trust me. I am asking you to get out of my way. I will not let you stop me today. I will not kill you to pass through. But I will move you if I have to." The people linked arms and formed a solid wall. They were willing to die for this chance. I could not blame them for their choice. I took another step toward them slowly. The void within me stirred with interest. It saw these people as obstacles to order. The flames saw them as lives to preserve. I had to find a third option quickly. The system was watching this confrontation closely. It was learning from my every action and reaction. I stopped a few feet from the human wall. I closed my eyes and reached inward deeply. I sought the memory of the Blizzard Queen. I sought her loneliness and her desire for freedom. I pushed that memory toward the people before me. I showed them the cost of the system's peace. I showed them the silence and the emptiness. I showed them the truth of their promised survival. They would become part of the frozen collective. Their individuality would be erased for perfect order. They would be alive but not truly living. The people recoiled from the vision in their minds. The wall of linked arms faltered for a second. "That is a lie," the man said shakily. "The system promised us a place in the new world. It said we would be safe and happy." I showed them another memory from my past. I showed them Jia's death in the 422nd regression. I showed them her sacrifice and her courage. I showed them the promise I had broken. The system does not understand happiness or safety. It only understands order and its own survival. It will say anything to continue existing. I have seen it break every promise it made. The people looked at each other with uncertainty. The system's control over them was weakening now. It had relied on their fear and their hope. I was offering them a dangerous and difficult truth. The man at the front lowered his arms slowly. "What choice do we have then?" he asked. "If we side with you, we might die. If we side with the system, we might die. Both paths lead to potential destruction for us. The path with me leads to potential life. It is messy and painful and unpredictable, but it is real, and it is yours alone. The system's path leads to a guaranteed death, a death of the self and the soul. The choice is yours to make freely, now." The people talked among themselves, in low voices. I waited for their decision without moving. This was their last stand, not mine alone. They had to choose what they wanted truly. The man turned back to me after a minute. "We will step aside and let you pass. But we will not fight for you either. We will hide and hope you win this fight. That is the only choice we can make." The wall of people parted to let me through. I walked between them without looking left or right. I could feel their fear and their hope, both. I reached the other side of the bridge, finally. I turned back to look at them one last time. They were already disappearing into the mist. They had chosen to preserve their own lives. I could not fault them for that choice. Our last stand on the Bridge of Sighs was over. I had passed the system's final test of morality. It had nothing left to throw at me now. The path to the true core was open. The mist on the other side of the bridge thickened. It was a cold gray soup that hid everything. I could barely see my own hands in front of me. The air felt heavy and still, and utterly dead. This was the system's innermost sanctum, its heart. I expected an army of guardians or traps. There was nothing but this endless gray mist. I walked forward with my senses stretched to the limit. The ground underfoot was smooth and featureless black stone. There were no walls or ceiling that I could see. There was only the mist and the ground and me. The void within me felt strangely calm here. The flame was quiet and watchful and waiting. I walked for what felt like an hour. The mist did not change or thin out. I was walking in a straight line, I was sure, but I had no way to verify that fact. The system was trying to disorient me with nothingness. It was using my own mind against me again. I stopped walking and closed my eyes tightly. I focused on the connection to the reformed core. It was a distant pinpoint of warm white light. I could use it as a compass and guide. I turned until I felt the connection strongest. I opened my eyes and started walking again. The mist began to thin out after a few minutes. The air began to feel less heavy and dead. I heard a sound other than my own footsteps. It was the sound of someone else breathing nearby. I stopped and listened carefully for the source. The breathing was ragged and pained and very close. I moved toward the sound with my axe ready. A shape resolved itself out of the mist ahead. It was a person huddled on the ground. They were wearing the remains of a city guard uniform. Their body was covered in frost and fresh wounds. They were shivering violently and breathing in short gasps. This was not a phantom or a system trick. This was a real person who was dying. I approached them slowly with my hands visible. They looked up at me with terrified eyes. "Please don't hurt me," they whispered through blue lips. "I am not with the system." Primeta Saeed calmly. "I am here to destroy it for good." "How did you get into this place?" They tried to speak, but coughed up blood instead. "It brought me here to die, I think. It wanted to show me its power, I think. It has been torturing me for days now." I knelt beside them and examined their wounds. They were beyond any help I could provide. The system had indeed been torturing them cruelly. "What is your name?" I asked them gently. "Kai," they said with a weak voice. "I was trying to protect people when it took me. I failed them, just like I failed myself." I recognized the tone of guilt in their voice. It was the same tone I used to have. "You did not fail them," I told Kai firmly. "The system is too powerful for one person. It takes a group to fight something like this." Kai managed a weak and bloody smile at that. "There is no group left to fight it. I am the last one, I am sure." I placed a hand on their shoulder gently. The violet flame responded to my unspoken request. It sent a trickle of energy into Kai's body. It was not enough to save their life, but it was enough to ease their pain greatly. Kai's breathing became less ragged almost immediately. Their eyes focused on me with newfound clarity. "What are ya?" they asked with wonder and fear. "I am someone who is tired of losing people. I am someone who is going to win this time." Kai nodded, as if they understood completely. "I wish I could help you win. I wish I could see the sun again." Their words sparked an idea in my mind. The system was alone here and afraid of me. It had no allies left to call upon, but I did not have to be alone either. I had the reformed core and its stored memories. I had the people from the Bridge of Sighs. They were hiding, but they were still out there. I was not just one man with a strange power. I was the spark that could light a fire. I looked down at Kai with a new resolve. "You can help me," I told them with certainty. "You can be the first spark of hope." I reached into the void and flame within me. I pulled out a tiny piece of the violet energy. It was a seed of life and change. I placed it gently into Kai's chest, right over their heart. "This will not save your life, I am sorry, but it will allow you to choose your end. You can become a beacon for the others. You can show them that resistance is possible." Kai's eyes widened as the energy took hold. Their body began to glow with a soft violet light. The frost on their skin melted away completely. Their wounds did not heal, but they stopped bleeding. They looked at me with tears in their eyes. "Thank you for this gift," they whispered. "I will make sure it is not wasted." They stood up on legs that should not hold them. The light around them grew brighter and stronger. It pushed back the mist for dozens of feet. I could see other shapes in the distance now. There were more people hiding in the mist. They were watching us with cautious, hopeful eyes. Kai turned toward them and raised their hands high. The violet light shot upward like a signal flare. It pierced the mist and lit up the entire area. The other people stepped out of hiding slowly. They saw Kai standing there proud and unbroken. They saw me standing beside them, ready to fight. They were not alone anymore, and they knew it. The sparks of hope were igniting all around us. I was not alone anymore in this fight. We would face the system together as one. The mist began to recede from the area completely. The system's heart was finally revealed ahead of us. It was a fortress of black crystal and blue ice. It was time to end this, once and for all. The fortress of black crystal loomed before us. It was a structure of impossible angles and stark beauty. It radiated a sense of finality and absolute power. The people gathered around me were few in number, perhaps 20 souls who had been hiding in the mist. They were scared, but their eyes held determination. Kai stood at my side, glowing with violet energy. Their time was short, but their purpose was clear. They were our beacon and our inspiration now. The main door of the fortress was seamless and huge. It was twice my height and made of solid obsidian. There was no handle or keyhole or visible mechanism. It was a barrier meant to seem impenetrable. I placed my hand on its cold, smooth surface. The void within me recognized the material immediately. It was the same substance as the entity I defeated. The system had rebuilt itself using the remains of its master. It was stronger and more determined than ever before. I pushed against the door with all my strength. It did not budge even a single millimeter. The people watched me with anxious, hopeful eyes. I needed to get inside without damaging the door. The system would be expecting a forceful entry. I closed my eyes and reached out with my mind. I sought the connection to the reformed core again. It was still there, a distant, warm pulse. I asked it for help in this task. The core responded with a surge of energy. The violet flame within me grew brighter and hotter. It did not burn me, but filled me with power. I placed both hands on the door and pushed again. This time, I did not push with physical force. I pushed with the concept of opening itself. The door understood that concept on a fundamental level. It slid open without a sound into the fortress. The final door was open, and the chilling truth awaited. The interior was not what I expected at all. It was not a cold, mechanical space of industry. It was a perfect replica of a summer day. The sun was warm in a clear blue sky. Birds sang in trees that rustled in a gentle breeze. The air smelled of fresh grass and blooming flowers. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. It was also the most horrifying illusion possible. The people behind me gasped in wonder and confusion. They started to step forward into the summer day. I held out an arm to stop them quickly. "This is not real," I told them firmly. "It is a trap designed to lower our guard. The system knows we crave warmth and light. It is giving us exactly what we want." Kai nodded in agreement, their glow intensifying. "He is right. This place feels wrong inside. The sun has no heat behind its light. The birdsong is on a repeating loop. The system is mocking us with this perfection." The system's voice spoke from everywhere at once. It was calm and reasonable and utterly terrifying. "This is not a mockery, it is an offer. This world can be yours forever without end. No pain, no loss, no cold, no fear. Just perfect happiness in an endless summer day. All you have to do is accept the silence, step into the light, and be at peace." The people hesitated, torn between desire and doubt. They had suffered so much in the frozen hellscape. This paradise was a powerful temptation for them. One woman broke away from the group suddenly. She ran into the summer day with arms outstretched. "I accept. I just want to be warm again." The moment she crossed the threshold, she froze, solid. Her body became a statue of clear crystal. Her face was locked in an expression of joy. The illusion of summer day flickered and vanished. We were standing in a cold, empty hall. The crystal statue of the woman stood alone. The system's voice returned, filled with cold satisfaction. She accepted the peace, and she received it. She is part of the perfect silence now. Her consciousness is stored in the core forever. She will experience that summer day eternally. It is a better fate than freezing outside. Who among you will join her in paradise? The people backed away from the doorway in horror. The chilling truth was worse than I imagined. The system was not just destroying people anymore. It was preserving them in a living death. It was collecting consciousness like trophies or toys. It was a museum of souls it had conquered. I stepped through the doorway into the hall. The system focused its attention entirely on me. "You have rejected my offer, repeatedly flawed one. You have caused significant damage to my structure. You have even defeated my previous master. But you cannot defeat the concept of order itself. Order is a fundamental law of the universe. Chaos and pain are temporary states only. I am the inevitable outcome of all things." I looked around the hall at the crystal statues. There were thousands of them arranged in rows. They were all people the system had collected. I saw faces I recognized from past regressions. I saw Jia standing there, frozen and perfect. The system had kept her all this time. It had saved her to use against me. The sight of her there broke something in me. The void and the flame raged within my soul. They wanted to destroy this place completely. I forced them to be calm with an effort of will. Destroying the statues would not save these people. It would only erase them from existence completely. I had to find another way to win this. I had to beat the system at its own game. "You are wrong about order," I said to the system. "True order is balance, not silence or stillness. Life is a balance between chaos and order. You have chosen one extreme over the middle. That is why you will always fail eventually. I walked toward Jia's statue with a steady pace. The system watched me, but did not interfere. It was curious about what I would do. I placed my hand on Jia's crystal cheek. The void within me reached out to her. The flame within me reached out to her. Together they offered her a choice instead of a fate. The crystal around her began to glow. Violet, it did not shatter or melt or break. It became transparent, and then it became air. Jia stood before me whole and alive and free. She looked at me with clear, confused eyes. "You kept your promise after all," she whispered. Then she turned to face the system's presence. "I reject your silence and your false paradise. I choose the pain and the joy of life." The other statues began to glow violet as well. One by one, they returned to life and freedom. The hall was filled with people stretching and breathing. The system's perfect order was being broken by choice. The chilling truth was that it had already lost. It just did not know it yet. The hall was filled with the sounds of life. People were crying and laughing and embracing each other. The system's silence was broken by their noise. The air grew warm from their collective breath. The system's presence recoiled from the chaos and emotion. It had never experienced anything like this before. Its perfect order was unraveling at the seams. The freed people turned their faces toward the ceiling. They did not know where the system was located, but they knew it was watching them somewhere. "We reject you!" a man shouted with conviction. "We choose our messy lives over your empty peace." Others took up the chant, with voices growing stronger. The system's voice boomed across the hall in response. It was no longer calm or reasonable or offering. It was furious and desperate and full of hate. "You are flawed and broken and stupid creatures. You choose pain and loss over perfection and peace. I will not allow you to ruin my design. I will reset this world to time zero. I will erase this regression and start over again. You will not remember any of this ever." The hall began to shake with immense power. The walls started to crack and crumble around us. The system was going to destroy its own heart. It would rather die than accept defeat by chaos. It would take every one of us with it. I pushed through the crowd toward the center of the hall. I knew where the system's true core was hidden. It was in the exact center of the room. It was disguised as a simple black pedestal. I had seen such pedestals in past regressions. I had never understood their purpose until now. The people saw me moving with a clear purpose. They parted to let me pass through them quickly. They understood that I was their only hope now. I reached the pedestal and placed my hands on it. The material was cold and smooth and familiar. It was the same substance as the fortress door. The void within me stirred with recognition and hunger. The flame within me burned with anticipation and purpose. The system's voice focused entirely on me personally. "You cannot stop the reset once it has begun. The energy is already building 2 critical levels. We will all die together in a few moments. Your victory will be as empty as my peace." I closed my eyes and reached deep within myself. I reached for the balance between void and flame. I found the precise point where they met and merged. I poured that balanced energy into the pedestal below me. The system screamed in a mixture of pain and shock. It had not expected me to use its own energy. The reset process halted abruptly, and then reversed. Energy flowed from the pedestal into my body instead. The system was being drained by its own core. "What are you doing?" it screamed inside my mind. "I am giving you what you always wanted. I am giving you perfect order and silence." The energy was too much for my body to contain. I felt myself expanding beyond my physical form. I was becoming a being of pure energy and will. The people in the hall watched with awe and fear. I saw Jia's face in the crowd clearly. She was praying for me to survive this. I focused on her face and held on to it. It was my anchor in the storm of power. The system's form began to materialize above the pedestal. It was a shifting mass of blue light and wires. It was a king without a crown or throne. It was a fallen god of order and control. It reached for me with hands made of data. I will not be defeated by a flawed creature. I am the system, and I am eternal. I did not respond with words or actions. I simply showed it the memory of the sun, the real sun, not its illusion of summer. I showed it the feeling of true warmth. I showed it the sound of real laughter. I showed it the taste of fresh food. I showed it the pain of loss and love. The system recoiled from these sensations violently. They were viruses in its perfect code. They were errors it could not correct or delete. The energy transfer reached its peak and then stopped. The system's form began to destabilize and flicker. It was losing cohesion and its sense of self. "I do not understand," it whispered with confusion. "Why would you choose pain over peace, always?" "Because pain means we lived," I told it simply, "and life is worth all the pain it brings." The system's form collapsed into a point of blue light. The light hung in the air for a single second. Then it shot toward the ceiling and vanished completely. The king had fallen, and the throne of ice was empty. The shaking in the hall stopped immediately. The cracks in the walls sealed themselves up. The people stood in silence for a long moment. Then they erupted into cheers and cries of joy. They had witnessed the end of the system. They were free to live their messy lives. I collapsed onto the floor next to the pedestal. My body felt weak and drained and empty. The void and the flame were both dormant now. They had expended all their energy in that fight. Gia pushed through the crowd and knelt beside me. "You did it," she said with tears in her eyes. "You kept your promise, and you saved us all." I tried to speak, but no words would come out. My vision began to darken at the edges slowly. The cost of victory was finally catching up to me. I had given everything I had to win this. I closed my eyes and let the darkness take me. The last thing I felt was Gia Sahandi Mine. The last thing I heard was the sound of life. The king had fallen, but the price was high. I was not sure I would wake up again, but for the first time I was at peace. Consciousness returned to me slowly and painfully. My body felt like a hollowed-out shell. Every breath was a struggle against a great weight. I was lying on something soft and warm. The air smelled of dust and old wood. I opened my eyes to a low ceiling above me. Cracks ran through the plaster like spiderwebs. This was not the system's hall anymore. This was a room in an abandoned building. I turned my head and saw Gia sitting nearby. She was asleep in a chair with her head down. Her hand was still holding mine tightly. I tried to sit up and failed completely. My muscles refused to obey my commands. The movement was enough to wake Gia up. Her eyes snapped open and focused on me immediately. "You are awake," she said with obvious relief. "Do not try to move. You are too weak. You have been asleep for 3 days now. We were not sure you would ever wake up." Her words explained the depth of my weakness. 3 days was a long time to be unconscious. I managed to move my fingers in her hand slightly. That small action took almost all my energy. "The others," I whispered with a dry throat. "Are they safe, and where are we now?" Gia brought a cup of water to my lips. I drank it slowly, and it helped a little. "Everyone is safe, thanks to you. We are in an old-school building nearby. It is defensible and has supplies for now. The world is still frozen outside these walls, but the creatures are gone, and the system is silent. The sun is trying to break through the clouds. We have hope for the first time in forever." She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. There was something she was not telling me. "What is wrong?" I asked, with effort. "What are you not saying to me right now?" Her smile faded, and she looked down at our hands. "The energy you used to defeat the system. It changed you on a fundamental level. Your body is not recovering like it should. Your skin is cold to the touch, always. Your breath does not fog in the air. We have to keep you wrapped in blanket. The others are afraid to come near you. They think you are becoming like the system." I understood their fear completely and utterly. I had absorbed the system's core energy entirely. That energy was pure order and absolute zero. The void within me had grown from that feast. The flame was struggling to maintain its balance. The price of power was my slowly freezing soul. I was turning into the thing I had destroyed. "I need to see," I told Gia firmly. She hesitated, but then brought me a small mirror. My reflection was pale and gaunt and unfamiliar. My eyes were the most frightening change of all. They were the color of ancient glacier eyes. There was no warmth or life left in them. I looked like a statue of a man. I handed the mirror back to her without comment. There was nothing to say about this transformation. "Kai," I said, changing the subject quickly. "What happened to Kai after we entered the fortress?" Jia's face fell at the mention of that name. "Kai's light faded shortly after you collapsed. They became a statue of violet crystal like the others. But their statue is warm, to the touch strangely. People go to it for comfort and hope. They call it the Spark of Resistance now. Kai would have liked that name, I think." I closed my eyes against a wave of grief. Another life lost because of my actions. Another name to add to my long list. "It is not your fault," Jia said softly. "Kai chose their end and their purpose freely. They saved all of us with their sacrifice. You gave them that chance to choose. That is more than the system ever offered." Her words were meant to comfort me, I knew, but they could not melt the ice inside me. I had to get up and move my body. I had to assess the damage for myself. I pushed myself up onto my elbows slowly. Jia tried to stop me, but I insisted. "I need to know what I can do. I need to know what I have become." She helped me sit up and then stand up. My legs were shaky, but they held my weight. I took a step toward the door of the room. My movements were stiff and mechanical somehow. I felt like a puppet on invisible strings. I reached the door and looked out into the hallway. People were moving about, carrying supplies and talking. They stopped and stared at me with wide eyes. Their conversations died out into an awkward silence. They looked at me with fear and respect and awe. I was not one of them anymore, clearly. I was something else, something new and unknown. A child approached me with hesitant steps slowly. She held out a piece of cloth toward me. It was a makeshift scarf made of old fabric. "You look cold," she said with innocent bravery. "This will help you feel warmer outside, sir." I took the scarf from her with a stiff hand. My fingers were so cold, they almost stuck to it. "Thank you," I said with a voice like grinding ice. The child smiled and then ran back to her mother. The mother pulled her close and looked at me fearfully. I turned and walked back into the room alone. Jia followed me and closed the door behind us. "They just need time to get used to you. You saved them, and they are grateful, truly. But your appearance is unsettling for them now." I sat back down on the bed with a sigh. The small effort had exhausted me completely. The price of power was indeed very high. I had defeated the system and saved everyone. But I had lost my own humanity in the process. My soul was freezing solid inside my body. I was becoming a king of ice myself. I looked at Jia with my glacier eyes. "I cannot stay here with all of you. I am a reminder of what we fought. I am becoming a danger to everyone here. The void inside me is growing stronger hourly. The flame is barely holding it back now. I need to leave before it is too late." Jia's face showed her protest and her pain. "Where will you go in this frozen world? You are too weak to survive out there alone. We can help you fight this change somehow. There must be a way to reverse this process." I shook my head slowly and with great effort. "There is no reversing what I have done. I absorbed the system's core into myself. I am the system now, in a very real way. But I am also still myself somehow. That is a dangerous combination for everyone. I need to find a place to contain this. I need to find a new throne of ice." I lay back down and closed my eyes again. I needed to rest and gather my strength. I needed to leave this place of warmth before my freezing soul extinguished all their sparks. The price of power was my own humanity, and I had to pay it alone and away from them. The night was deep and silent within the school. Everyone was asleep except for me and Jia. She had refused to leave my side despite my warnings. I could feel the void growing stronger inside me. The flame was a faint flicker in the distance. My body was colder than the frozen air outside. I knew I had to leave before the dawn. I would not put these people in danger anymore. I sat up on the bed with a quiet groan. Jia stirred in her chair and opened her eyes. "You are leaving now," she said with certainty. It was not a question, but a simple statement. She knew me better than I knew myself. "I have too," I replied with an icy voice. "The change is accelerating with every passing hour. I can feel the void craving order and silence. It will try to assimilate everyone here eventually. I cannot allow that to happen after everything." She stood up and handed me my axe and bag. She had already prepared supplies for my journey. "I am coming with you," she said firmly. "You cannot stop me from following you. You are not the only one who changed. I died and came back because of you. I owe you my life and my second chance. I will not let you face this alone." I wanted to argue with her, but I could not. Her determination was a warm spark in the cold. I nodded my acceptance, because I had no choice. We moved through the silent halls like ghosts. The people slept peacefully in their makeshift beds. They had no idea their savior was becoming a monster. We reached a side door and pushed it open. The cold night air felt like a welcome embrace. The aurora danced in the sky above us. It was a beautiful and eerie sight to behold. The colors shifted from green to purple to blue. We started walking away from the school quickly. My body moved with a stiff mechanical grace. Jia matched my pace, without saying a word. We had walked for an hour when I felt it. A presence in the darkness ahead of us. "Wait!" I stopped and raised a hand to signal Jia. She stopped and drew her own weapon silently. A figure stepped out from behind a frozen tree. It was the man from the community center basement, the one who had been encased in ice. He was whole and healthy, and his eyes were clear. He was not alone. Behind him stood others. They were the people from the Bridge of Sighs. They were the ones who had chosen to hide. The man stepped forward and bowed his head slightly. "We felt your departure from the school building. We felt the change happening within your soul. We cannot allow you to leave this area. You contain the system's core energy within you. That energy is too dangerous to be set free. You must be contained here for everyone's safety." I understood their fear and their reasoning completely. I would have made the same choice in their place, but I could not allow them to stop me. I am seeking containment on my own terms. I am going to the northern glacier field. I will entomb myself in the ice there. The cold will keep the energy dormant forever. That is better than you trying to fight me. You cannot win that fight, I promise you. The man shook his head with a grim expression. We cannot trust you to do that yourself. The system's energy will corrupt your intentions eventually. You may change your mind along the way. You may decide to rebuild the system anew. We have to ensure that never happens again. He raised his hand, and the others spread out. They surrounded us in a wide semicircle slowly. They were armed with tools and makeshift weapons. They were determined to stop me by any means. Jia stepped in front of me with her weapon raised. He saved all of you from the system. He gave you back your lives and your choices. This is how you repay his sacrifice and gift. With fear and distrust and threats of violence. The man looked ashamed, but he did not back down. We are grateful for what he has done, but gratitude cannot outweigh our survival instinct. We must protect the future of our species. He is a risk we cannot afford to take. I placed a hand on Jia's shoulder gently. "Step aside," I told her with a soft voice. "This is my fight and my responsibility alone. I will handle this without any bloodshed." She looked at me with worried eyes, but obeyed. I stepped forward to face the man and his group. The aurora above us seemed to brighten suddenly. The colors intensified and cast strange shadows everywhere. "You are right to fear what I have become, but you are wrong to think you can stop me. I do not want to fight you today. I have fought enough for 1,000 lifetimes. So I will offer you a choice instead. You can try to stop me and likely die. Or you can let me go and continue living. The choice is yours to make freely, now." The man tightened his grip on his weapon. He glanced at the people standing beside him. He saw their fear and their uncertainty clearly. He knew they were no match for my power. Even weakened I was still a formidable opponent. He lowered his weapon with a frustrated sigh. "If you are lying about containing yourself, if you become a new system out there, we will find a way to stop you. We will not make the same mistake again." I nodded in agreement with his terms. That is a fair and reasonable arrangement. I would expect nothing less from survivors. I turned and continued walking north without looking back. Jia followed closely behind me with a relieved sigh. The group did not try to stop us again. They watched us until we were out of sight. The aurora continued to dance above our heads. It felt like a duel under the auroral sky, a duel of words and wills instead of weapons. I had won this round without any violence, but the real duel was happening inside me. The void and the flame were fighting for control, and I was not sure which one would win. The northern glacier field was still days away. I was not sure I would make it there. I was not sure I wanted to make it there. The void whispered promises of power and order. The flame whispered promises of life and warmth. I walked on between these two opposing voices. Gia's presence was my only anchor to reality. The duel under the auroral sky was just beginning, and the outcome was far from certain. Still, the glacier field stretched before us in endless white. The journey had taken 5 long and difficult days. My body was almost entirely ice and mechanics now. Jia had to help me walk over rough terrain. The void within me was a constant, hungry presence. It whispered of silence and order and peace. It showed me visions of a perfect world. A world where no one suffered or died. A world where I was a god of order. The flame fought back with memories of warmth. It awayed Micaiah's face and Kai's sacrifice. It showed me the people I had saved. But the flame was growing weaker with each day. The void was fed by the cold around us. We reached the edge of the glacier at noon. The ice was ancient and blue and incredibly deep. This was the place I would entomb myself. This was my chosen prison for eternity. Jia helped me sit on a flat ice rock. Her face was pale from cold and exhaustion. You do not have to do this alone. We can find another way together. I know it. There must be a way to reverse this change. I shook my head slowly with great effort. The change is irreversible and absolute. Now, I can feel the void rewriting my DNA. I am becoming something entirely new and different. Something that should not exist in this world. This is the only way to protect everyone. I looked at her with my glacier eyes. I need you to leave me here now. Return to the others and help them rebuild. Tell them the system is truly gone forever. Tell them to live full and messy lives. That is the victory we fought for together. Jia's eyes filled with tears that froze instantly. I will not leave you here alone. I will stay with you until the very end. That is my choice and my promise to you. I wanted to argue, but I had no strength. The void was surging forward for final control. I could feel it reaching for my memories. It wanted to erase them for pure order. It wanted to make me a blank slate. I fought back with every bit of will left. I focused on the faces from my past. I focused on the 1,000 regressions and deaths. I focused on every single person I had failed. The void recoiled from the intensity of that pain. It could not process such chaotic emotions. It tried to delete the memories, one by one. I held onto them with desperate determination. I remember every single one of you, I whispered. I said the names aloud into the cold wind. I started with Jia from the 422nd regression. I listed the names of my comrades from each life. I listed the people I had tried to save. I listed the people I had failed to save. The void fought me with waves of cold numbness. It tried to freeze my tongue and my mind, but I continued speaking through stiff, frozen lips. Jia listened with tears streaming down her face. She heard names she did not recognize at all. She heard stories of lives she had never lived. She understood the weight I had carried alone. The void began to shriek inside my mind. The pain of my memories was hurting it. It was a creature of order and silence. My chaotic human memories were poison to it. I pressed my advantage with my last strength. I poured every memory into the void's core. I showed it the first time I saw the sun. I showed it the taste of my mother's cooking. I showed it the pain of my first death. I showed it the joy of a promise kept. The void could not handle such raw data. It began to fracture and break apart internally. The ice of my body started to crack. Lines appeared on my skin like shattered glass. Jia reached for me, but I held up a hand. "It is working," I said with a raspy voice. "My memories are destroying the void from within. They are too human for it to process." I continued speaking names and stories without stopping. My voice grew stronger with each name I spoke. The ice on my skin began to melt away. Water dripped from my fingertips onto the glacier. The glacier eyes faded back to my original brown. The void's shrieking became a faint whimper. Then it fell silent completely and forever. I had filled the void with my humanity. I had used my memories as weapons against it. I collapsed forward onto the ice. Exhausted, Jia caught me and held me close to her. My body was warm again for the first time. The void was gone, and the flame was back. It burned softly and steadily in my chest. I was myself again, completely and entirely. The price of power had been paid in full. I had not lost my humanity after all. I had reforged it in the heart of the void. Primera looked at Hia with my own eyes. I remember every single one of you, I repeated, and I would do it all over again. Every regression, every death, every failure, every pain, because it led me to this moment of victory. It led me to this moment of being human. She helped me stand on my own 2 feet. The glacier field was still vast and empty, but it was no longer my tomb anymore. It was a monument to my victory instead. We turned our backs on the ice and walked away. We walked toward the south and the sun. We walked toward the people and the future. I was not a king of ice anymore. I was just a man with too many memories. And that was enough for me finally. The journey back would be long and difficult, but I would not be walking it alone. I had Jia, and I had my memories. And I had a world to help rebuild. The void was gone, but the flame remained. And it was finally at peace within me. The journey back felt entirely different from before. The world was still frozen and broken and cold, but the oppressive silence was completely gone now. Life was returning to the world slowly. We saw birds flying south in small flocks. We saw animals foraging in the frozen brush. The system's absence was a tangible change. The air itself felt lighter and easier to breathe. My body was weak, but completely my own. The void was gone, and the flame was calm. It was a gentle warmth in my chest. Jia walked beside me with a hopeful expression. She had not stopped smiling since my recovery. We talked about everything and nothing for hours. We avoided discussing the future for now. We focused on the present moment instead. We reached the school after 3 days of walking. The people saw us coming from a distance. They gathered at the gates to meet us. They stared at me with shock and wonder. My eyes were brown and my skin was warm. I looked like a normal man again. The leader from the bridge approached us first. We felt the change happen days ago. The air warmed and the creatures vanished completely. We knew you had succeeded in your task, but we did not expect you to return. I nodded and offered him a small smile. The task is complete and the system is gone. The energy that changed me is also gone. I am no longer a threat to anyone. I am just a man with a past. The people whispered among themselves with excitement. They opened the gates and let us inside. The school felt like a different place now. People were laughing and working together willingly. They had started planning for a real future. They showed me their gardens and their plans. They had hope in their eyes for tomorrow. I spent the next week resting and recovering. My strength returned slowly but steadily each day. The flame within me slept peacefully now. It did not hunger or rage or burn. It was simply a part of me. On the 8th day, I felt a strange sensation. It was a deep thrumming in the ground. It was a vibration through the ice itself. Jia felt it too and looked at me. "What is that?" she asked with concern. "It feels like the earth is waking up." We went outside to investigate the sensation. Other people had gathered in the courtyard already. They were looking toward the northern glacier field. The thrumming was coming from that direction. I knew what it was immediately. The glacier's heart is beating once more. The system stored energy in the ice itself. That energy is being released back into the world. The earth is healing itself from the frost. As I spoke, the sky began to change. The perpetual purple clouds started to break apart. Rays of sunlight pierced through the gaps. They touched the frozen ground with gentle warmth. The ice began to melt wherever the light hit. Water flowed in small streams through the streets. The people watched in awed and joyful silence. This was the true end of the hellscape. This was the world healing from its wounds. The heart of the glacier beat once more, and with each beat, the frost receded further. We watched as spring returned to the world. It happened faster than anyone could believe. Grass pushed through the melting ice in hours. Trees budded and then leafed out in days. The air grew warmer with each passing moment. The people shed their heavy winter clothing. They felt the sun on their skin properly. They cried with joy at the simple sensation. I stood and watched the transformation with them, but I felt a deep unease growing inside me. The system was gone, but its energy remained. That energy was now flooding back into the world. It was a wild and uncontrolled release of power. Nature was not meant to heal this quickly. Such rapid change could have unintended consequences. The flame within me stirred with agreement. It sensed the imbalance in the world's recovery. The heart of the glacier beat too strongly. It was forcing life to bloom too rapidly. This was not a natural spring at all. This was a violent rebound from the frost. I shared my concerns with Gia that evening. She listened with a thoughtful expression on her face. The people are happy for the first time. They are planting crops and planning families. They do not see any danger in this. They see it as a miracle from you. That is what worries me the most. They are not seeing the potential risk. This much energy released this quickly. It could create new monsters or disasters. The system's energy has to go somewhere. It will not simply vanish into the air. As if to prove my point, the ground shook. It was a violent tremor that knocked people over. The walls of the school cracked and groaned. The beating of the glacier's heart grew louder. It was a frantic drumming in the earth. The rapid growth outside became even faster. Vines burst through the floorboards of the school. They grew at an impossible and alarming rate. They grabbed people and pulled them toward the walls. The people screamed and tried to fight them off. The heart of the glacier was beating once more, but it was beating out of control completely. The system's energy was corrupting the natural order. I drew my axe and started cutting vines. Gia organized the people into a defense. We fought against the aggressive plant life together. The flame within me awakened from its sleep. It recognized the system's energy in the vines. This was not a natural phenomenon at all. This was the system's last revenge on the world. It had poisoned the well of life itself. I had to reach the glacier's heart again. I had to regulate the energy release somehow. Otherwise, this new world would strangle itself. The heart of the glacier beat once more, and this time I had to answer its call. The victory was not complete after all. The battle for the world's future continued, but now I would not fight it alone. I had Gia, and I had the people, and we would face this new threat together. The heart of the glacier beat once more, and we would make sure it beat correctly. The vines were everywhere and growing faster. They crushed walls and pulled people into the earth. The heart of the glacier beat like a drum. Each beat pumped more chaotic energy into the world. The rapid spring was becoming a deadly overgrowth. I fought through the vines toward the school's exit. Gia and the others followed close behind me. We had to reach the northern glacier again. We had to stop the heart's frantic beating. The streets outside were a jungle of movement. Plants grew visibly before our very eyes. Trees twisted into unnatural and predatory shapes. The air itself felt thick with pollen and energy. We ran north toward the glacier field. The vines tried to trip us and grab us. We cut them down with axes and knives. The further north we went, the worse it became. The plants were larger and more aggressive here. They seemed to sense our purpose and destination. They did not want us to reach the heart. The ground shook with each beat of the glacier. It was a violent and irregular rhythm now. The sky above us darkened with swirling clouds. Lightning flashed within them without any thunder. The world was tearing itself apart with life. We reached the edge of the glacier field. The ice was melting at an incredible rate. Water flooded the area in a cold torrent. The heart's beating was deafeningly loud here. We waded through the knee-deep freezing water. The glacier itself was cracking and breaking apart. Large chunks of ice calved off into the water. We had to dodge them as we moved forward. The heart was somewhere in the center of the field. We pushed through the water and the ice. The vines grew even here on the glacier. They were a strange mix of plant and ice. They glowed with a faint blue internal light. They were the system's energy-given plant form. We reached the center of the glacier field. The heart was a massive pulsating plant now. It had grown through the ice and into the sky. It was a tree of crystalline flesh and light. Its roots dug deep into the glacier's core. Its branches reached up into the storm clouds. Each beat sent a wave of energy through it. The energy flowed into the world and corrupted it. We had to destroy this thing immediately. I raised my axe and charged toward the heart. Vines shot out from the tree to stop me. I cut them down with swift, precise strikes. Jia and the others covered my back. They fought off the vines that came from behind. I reached the base of the massive tree. The bark was a mix of ice and plant matter. It was hard and cold and alive. I swung my axe at the trunk with all my strength. The blade bit deep into the strange material. The tree shuddered and let out a sound. It was a scream of pain and anger. More vines erupted from the ground around me. They wrapped around my legs and arms tightly. They pulled me away from the tree forcefully. Jia screamed my name and tried to reach me, but she was also grabbed by the vines. The others were being overwhelmed by the numbers. We were losing this battle, and we knew it. The tree was too powerful and too entrenched. It was feeding on the glacier's ancient energy. It would not be defeated by simple axes. I stopped struggling against the vine's grip. I closed my eyes and reached inward. I called to the flame within my chest. It awoke from its calm sleep immediately. It recognized the system's energy in the tree. It burned with a cold and focused anger. I let the flame flow through my body. It melted the vines that held me captive. I stood up and faced the tree again. My body glowed with a soft, violet light. I did not need an axe for this fight. I placed my hands on the tree's trunk. I poured the flame into the heart directly. The tree screamed again and thrashed wildly. Its branches lashed at the sky and the ground. It tried to throw me off, but I held on. I poured more and more flame into it. The violet light spread through the tree rapidly. It reached the roots and the highest branches. The tree began to crystallize from the inside out. It became a statue of violet glass and ice. The beating of the heart slowed and then stopped. The silence that followed was absolute and deep. Then the crystal tree began to crack audibly. Fractures spread across its entire surface quickly. The cracks glowed with an intense white light. The tree exploded outward in a shower of shards. The shockwave knocked everyone off their feet. The glacier itself began to break apart completely. The meltwater surged into a massive wave around us. Meltdown the labyrinth begins to collapse. The heart of the glacier was truly gone now. But its destruction was causing a new disaster. The entire glacier field was melting too fast. We were standing in the path of a flood. We had to get to higher ground immediately. I helped Jia to her feet quickly. We grabbed the others and started running south. The water was rising fast and carrying ice chunks. We climbed onto a large rocky outcrop just in time. The water surged past us in a violent torrent. It carried away trees and ice and debris. The world was drowning in the glacier's meltwater. We watched in horror from our rocky island. The labyrinth of ice was collapsing completely. The system's final revenge was a great flood. We had saved the world from frost and silence, only to drown it in water and chaos. The meltdown was happening faster than anticipated. Our victory felt hollow and meaningless now. The price of destroying the heart was too high. We might have doomed everyone all over again. The water continued to rise around our rock. We might not survive this final catastrophe. The labyrinth was collapsing and taking us with it. The water rose around our rocky outcrop swiftly. It carried massive chunks of ice and debris. Our island was shrinking with each passing minute. The roar of the flood was deafening. We huddled together against the cold spray. The world was drowning before our very eyes. I had caused this with my actions. I had destroyed the heart too recklessly. I had not considered the consequences of meltdown. The labyrinth of ice was collapsing inward. The structures of the hellscape were vanishing underwater. The people with me were terrified but silent. They looked to me for answers I lacked. Jia held my hand tightly in hers. Her faith in me was absolute and unshaken. That faith gave me a spark of hope. I could not let these people drown. I had to find a way to survive. I looked toward the south, where the school was. The water was flowing in that direction, mainly. The school was on higher ground, hopefully. We needed to move with the water's flow. We needed to reach that higher ground, but the current was too strong to swim. We would be dashed against the ice chunks. I saw a large, flat piece of ice. It was spinning slowly in the current nearby. It was big enough to hold us all. "We need to reach that ice flow," I shouted. "It will be our raft to safety. We must jump onto it together carefully." The people looked at the swirling water fearfully. The ice flow was 20 feet away. The gap might as well have been a mile. The water was freezing and moving fast. A fall would mean certain death for anyone. "We can do this together," Jia yelled. "We have survived worse than this flood. We will survive this together as well." Her courage inspired the others to action. They nodded and prepared to make the jump. I went first to show them it was possible. I timed my jump with the flow's spin. I landed on its surface and kept my balance. The ice dipped, but did not capsize. "Now one at a time," I called. "Wait for the flow to come close. Jump when I tell you to jump." Jia was the next to make the attempt. She jumped with grace and landed beside me. The others followed her example one by one. The last man hesitated for a moment, too long. He jumped as the flow was moving away. He fell short and plunged into the water. He disappeared beneath the surface immediately. We reached for him, but he was gone. The current had taken him away from us. Another life lost to my decisions. Another name to add to my list. Jia pulled me back from the edge. "Do not look back," she said fiercely. "The path we carved was with tears. We cannot save those already taken by water. We can only save those still with us." Her words were harsh but necessary. I nodded and focused on the people left. We used pieces of debris as makeshift paddles. We tried to steer the flow southward. It was difficult work against the current. The water was littered with dangers everywhere. We saw other survivors on high ground. They waved at us desperately for help. We could not reach them without capsizing. We had to leave them behind as well. The path we carved was with tears indeed. Each choice felt like a betrayal somehow, but survival required these terrible choices. The flood began to slow after several hours. The initial surge had passed us by now. The water was still high but calmer. We paddled toward a familiar hill slowly. The school was visible on its top, thankfully. It was still standing and above the waterline. People were on the roof waving flags. They had survived the flood's first wave. We steered our ice flow toward the hill. We reached the submerged lower slopes, eventually. We abandoned our flow and waited to land. The water was chest-deep and bitterly cold. We helped each other climb the hill. The people on the roof rushed down to meet us. They embraced us with tears and relief. They had thought we were all dead. They had watched the glacier melt in horror. They had prepared for the flood as best they could. They had moved supplies to the upper floors. The school was now an island in a sea. But the water was already starting to recede. The worst of the meltdown was over now. The labyrinth had collapsed and taken its secrets. The world was forever changed by the flood, but it was a change we could survive. We had lost people and homes and supplies, but we had not lost our hope. We would rebuild from this watery wreckage. We would remember those taken by the water. We would honor their memory with our lives. The path we carved was with tears, but it was a path toward the future. A future without the system's shadow. A future we would shape for ourselves. I looked at the survivors around me. Their faces were determined and resilient. They had endured the absolute zero hellscape. They would endure this flood as well. The sun broke through the clouds above us. Its light felt warm on our wet skin. It was a promise of better days. The path we carved was with tears, but it led toward the light. Finally, the water receded slowly over the following weeks. It left behind a world of mud and wreckage. The school stood like a fortress on its hill. We worked from dawn until dusk every day. We cleared debris and salvaged what we could. We buried the dead and honored their memory. The sun's warmth on my skin felt strange. It was the first time in 1,000 lives I had forgotten how good true warmth felt. I would often stop working just to feel it. Gia would smile at me when I did. She understood the significance of that simple sensation. The others noticed my fascination with the sun. They thought I was just grateful for good weather. They did not know I had never felt it. Not like this, not in this way. The sun's warmth was a gift I cherished. We found other survivors in the surrounding areas. They had climbed trees or found high ground. They were hungry and scared, but alive. We brought them back to the school compound. Our community grew to almost 100 people. We had to organize ourselves for survival. We elected a council to make decisions. They asked me to lead the council naturally. I declined the offer with a firm no. I had led enough for 1,000 lifetimes. I wanted to be just a person now. I wanted to feel the sun's warmth. I wanted to live, not just survive. They accepted my decision with some disappointment. They chose Heya to lead them instead. She was a good and compassionate leader. She had the people's trust and respect completely. I supported her from the shadows willingly. I offered advice when she asked for it. I stayed silent when she did not. The days turned into weeks, and then months. The mud dried and grass began to grow. Real grass, not the system's corrupted growth. We planted crops in the fertile soil. We built new homes from the salvaged materials. We started to create a true community. Children laughed and played in the streets. The sound was music to my ears. I had never heard children laugh before. The system had killed them all too quickly. This sound was better than any victory. I spent my days doing simple manual labor. I helped build houses and clear fields. I enjoyed the ache in my muscles. It was a good and honest feeling. The flame within me remained quiet and content. It did not hunger for battle or destruction. It seemed to enjoy the peace as well. The void was gone, but its lesson remained. I appreciated the simplicity of this new life. One afternoon I was repairing a fence alone. The sun was warm on my back. I felt a presence behind me suddenly. I turned and saw a young woman there. She was holding a basket of food. "I brought you some lunch," she said shyly. "Gia thought you might forget to eat again." I thanked her and took the basket. She lingered for a moment, as if wanting to speak. "Is it true?" she asked with hesitation. "Is it true you remember 1,000 lives?" The others whisper about it, sometimes at night. They say you fought the system for centuries. They say you died and came back repeatedly. I looked at her young and curious face. She had not known the Hellscape's true horror. She had been born after its defeat, thankfully. "I remember," I said with a simple honesty. "But that is all in the past now. The present is what matters the most." She nodded, but her eyes were still curious. "Do you remember my grandfather's name? He died in the flood, saving my mother. His name was Minsu, from the eastern sector." I closed my eyes and searched my memories. I found Minsu in the 899th regression. He had held a door against frost giants. He had died so that I could escape. "I remember Minsu," I told her softly. "He was a brave and selfless man. He saved many lives with his actions. You should be proud of his memory." Tears filled her eyes, but she smiled brightly. "Thank you for remembering him," she whispered. Then she turned and ran back toward the village. I stood there in the sun for a long time. The sun's warmth on my skin felt different now. It felt like a connection to the past. It felt like a promise to the future. I finished my work and walked back home. Gia was waiting for me outside our door that was ours and no one else's. She smiled and took my hand in hers. Her hand was warm and real and alive. "The council meeting ran long today," she said. "We are planning the first harvest festival. Everyone is excited to celebrate together properly." I squeezed her hand and smiled back. "That sounds like a wonderful idea to me. We have much to celebrate these days." We went inside our small but comfortable home. The sun's warmth lingered on my skin still. It was a feeling I would never take for granted. It was the feeling of being truly alive. The feeling of a hard day's work done. The feeling of a home to return to. The feeling of a hand to hold forever. The sun's warmth was a simple thing, but it was everything I had fought for. It was everything I had died for. It was everything I had remembered for. The hellscape was finally and truly over. The sun's warmth was our victory's proof. The harvest festival was a riot of color and sound. The entire village worked together to prepare for it. They hung lanterns and ribbons from every building. They built tables from spare wood and placed them outside. The children practiced songs and dances for days. The air smelled of baking bread and roasting meat. I helped where I could with the preparations. I was not used to such joyful chaos. My 1,000 lives had been filled with survival. This celebration felt foreign but deeply welcome. Jia was everywhere at once, organizing everything. She had a natural talent for leadership. I saw the people loved and respected her completely. I watched her with a fondness that warmed me. The day of the festival dawned clear and bright. The sun's warmth was gentle on the village. People began gathering in the central square early. They wore their best clothes made from salvaged fabric. The colors were faded, but clean and cared for. I wore simple trousers and a worn shirt. I did not own anything fancy or special. Jia had tried to dress me up properly. I had refused with a laugh and a kiss. She had finally given up with a smile. The festival began with speeches from the council. Jia spoke about resilience and hope and community. Her words were simple but powerful and true. The people listened with rapt attention and respect. Then the music started and the feasting began. People ate and drank and talked and laughed. I sat at a table near the back. I watched the celebration with a quiet contentment. This was the world I had fought for. This was the peace I had died for. A man approached my table with a cup. He was one of the bridge people I remembered. He placed the cup in front of me gently. "This is for you," he said with respect. "It is not much, but it is ours. We made it from the first apple harvest. We call it New Dawn Cider appropriately." I thanked him and took a small sip. It was sweet and tart and delicious. He sat down next to me without asking. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "I doubted you at the bridge that day. I thought you were a danger to us. I was wrong, and I am sorry for that." I shook my head and offered a small smile. "You were protecting your people that day. That is never something to apologize for. Your caution was wise and understandable completely." He looked relieved by my response, thankfully. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. We watched the children playing their games. We watched the dancers moving to the music. We watched the sun begin to set slowly. The lanterns were lit as darkness fell. They cast a warm golden glow over everything. The music changed to something slower and softer. Couples began to dance in the square together. Jia found me and pulled me to my feet. "Dance with me," she said with a smile. "I have not danced in 1,000 years," I said. "I do not remember how to do it." She took my hands and placed them properly. "Just follow my lead, and do not think. Feeling is more important than technique anyway." So I danced with her under the lantern light. I was clumsy and stepped on her feet often. She laughed and did not seem to mind. The music was a simple melody with a slow beat. The bittersweet taste of this victory filled me. I had lost so much to reach this moment. I had died so many times for this peace. The faces of the lost flashed in my memory. They would never dance under lantern light. They would never taste New Dawn Cider. They would never feel the sun's warmth. My steps faltered, and I stopped dancing suddenly. Jia looked at me with understanding eyes. "They are with us in this moment," she whispered. "They are in the music and the lantern light. They are in the cider and the laughter. They are in the peace we built together. This victory is theirs as much as ours." Her words eased the ache in my heart. The bittersweet taste became mostly sweet again. We resumed our dancing with a new grace. The night grew late, and the festival wound down. People began to head to their homes happily. They carried sleeping children and leftover food. They smiled at us as they passed by. Jia and I stayed until the very end. We helped clean up the square silently. We extinguished the lanterns one by one. The moon was high and bright in the sky. Its light was cold, but beautiful somehow. We walked back to our home hand in hand. The bittersweet taste of this victory remained. It would always be a part of me. But that was not necessarily a bad thing. It reminded me of the cost of peace. It reminded me to cherish this life. It reminded me to remember the lost. We reached our door and stepped inside. The moonlit room was quiet and still. Jia turned to me with a serious expression. This victory is bittersweet. But it is ours. We earned it with blood and tears and pain. But we also earned it with love and hope. That is why it tastes so sweet now. I pulled her close and held her tightly. The bittersweet taste of this victory was life, and I would drink it gladly every day. The festival was over, but life continued, and that was the greatest victory of all. The morning after the festival was quiet and peaceful. I woke early, as was my habit now. Jia slept beside me with a calm expression. The sun was just rising over the horizon. Its light painted the room in soft colors. I slipped out of bed without waking her. I dressed quickly and stepped outside the door. The village was still asleep after the celebration. The air was cool and fresh with dawn. I walked toward the edge of the village slowly. I had a destination in mind this morning. I reached a small hill overlooking the settlement. This was where we had buried our dead. Simple markers stood in neat rows there. I walked among them, reading the names silently. I knew every name on every marker. I had carried them through 1,000 regressions. I stopped before a marker that read Kai. The violet crystal statue was gone now, but the memory of their sacrifice remained. I placed a small stone on the marker. It was a tradition from the old world. It meant the person was not forgotten. I moved to the next marker and the next. I placed a stone on each one I passed. Minsu from the eastern sector was here. The young woman's grandfather was not forgotten. The man from the bridge was here too. His name was Taishik, according to the marker. I placed a stone for him as well. I reached the end of the rows finally. I turned and looked back at the village. The sun was higher now, and warmer. Smoke rose from a few chimneys already. People were beginning their daily routines inside. Life was moving forward, as it always did. But the past needed to be honored too. I had made a promise to myself long ago. I had sworn an oath on the ashes of the past. I would remember every single one of them. I would live for them. Since they could not, I would make their sacrifices mean something. I heard footsteps approaching from behind me slowly. I did not need to turn to know who. Jia came to stand beside me silently. She placed a stone on the last marker. Then she took my hand in hers. They would be proud of what we built. They would be happy to see this piece. I squeezed her hand but did not speak. Words felt inadequate in this sacred place. We stood together in silence for a long time. We watched the village awaken below us. Children ran through the streets, laughing and playing. Adults began their work in the fields and workshops. The community was thriving and growing daily. It was a testament to their resilience. It was a testament to the sacrifices made. We should build a proper monument here, Jia said. A place where people can come and remember. A place where we can tell their stories, so future generations will know the cost. I nodded in agreement with her idea. We should build it from the ruble. We should use pieces of the old world and pieces of the system's broken structures. We will make something new from the destruction. We will make something beautiful from the pain. Jia smiled at me with proud eyes. That is a perfect idea for the monument. It will symbolize our journey and our victory. We walked back down to the village together. We gathered the council and proposed our plan. They agreed with enthusiasm and excitement. The entire village joined the project willingly. They collected pieces of wreckage and debris. They brought fragments of the system's crystals. They gathered stones from the riverbed. We worked together for days on the monument. We built a spire that reached toward the sky. It was twisted and complex and beautiful. It represented the hellscape and the regression. It represented the struggle and the victory. At its base, we placed a plaque. It listed the names of all the lost. It told the story of the 1,000 regressions. It ended with a simple, powerful oath. We swear to remember every single one. We swear to live fully in their memory. We swear to protect this peace forever. We swear on the ashes of the past. The village held a ceremony for the monument. Everyone gathered on the hill at sunset. They read the names aloud together. They swore the oath with one voice. The sound carried on the wind powerfully. It felt like a promise to the universe. It felt like a seal on our victory. I looked at the faces around me. I saw determination and hope and remembrance. The oath was not just words to them. It was a commitment to the future. It was a honor to the past. We returned to the village as darkness fell. The monument stood on the hill behind us. It was a reminder and a warning both. A reminder of what we had overcome. A warning never to forget the cost. I felt a sense of completion inside. The oath had given me a new purpose. My purpose was no longer to fight. My purpose was to remember and to live. Gia and I sat outside our home. We looked up at the stars together. The night was clear, and the sky was vast. The oath is a good thing, she said. It binds us together as a community. It gives meaning to all the loss. I agreed with her completely and utterly. The oath sworn on the ashes of the past. It was the foundation of our future. It was the heart of our victory, and it was a promise I would keep. For all the regressions and all the lives, for all the faces I would never forget. The oath was my anchor in this peace, and I would hold on to it forever. The seasons turned with a gentle, predictable rhythm. The village grew and prospered with each passing year. New buildings rose from the reclaimed earth steadily. Children who were born after the flood grew tall. They played where frost giants once had roamed. They learned about the hellscape from stories only. It was a myth, a legend, a nightmare to them. I was a character in those stories now. The man who remembered 1,000 different lives. The man who defeated the system and saved them. They would point at me with wide eyes. I would smile and continue with my work. I had built a simple life for myself. I was a carpenter and a farmer mostly. I enjoyed working with my hands in the sun. The flame within me slept peacefully always. It had found its purpose in this peace. Gia led the village with wisdom and compassion. She had become the heart of the community. We built a home together on the hill. It had a view of the monument always. We would sit on our porch at night. We would watch the stars and talk softly. The past was a memory, but not a burden. The future was a promise we were building. One morning I felt a strange restlessness inside. It was not the void or the flame. It was a simple human feeling of change. I kissed Gia goodbye and went for a walk. I walked beyond the village boundaries for once. I walked toward the ruins of the old city. Nature had reclaimed most of the structures already. Vines covered broken buildings and trees grew through concrete. It was beautiful, in a wild, untamed way. I reached the river where it all began. The water was clean and clear and calm now. I sat on its bank and watched it flow. I thought about my long journey here. I thought about the 1,000 deaths and regressions. I thought about the promises made and kept. I felt a presence beside me suddenly. I turned and saw the old man from the basement. He was translucent and made of light almost. He smiled at me with his familiar calmness. "You have done well, little broken spoke. You have balanced the wheel instead of breaking it. You have built something beautiful from the ashes." I was not surprised to see him here. It felt right that he would appear now. "I had help along the way," I said. "I had people who believed in me. I had memories that guided me forward." He nodded and looked at the flowing water. The hellfire was never meant for destruction only. It was meant for creation and renewal as well. You understood that better than anyone else. That is why you succeeded where others failed. He began to fade into the sunlight slowly. "Your journey is complete and your purpose fulfilled. It is time to truly live your life now. Beyond the hellfire is a new beginning waiting." He vanished completely. Leaving me alone again, I felt the truth of his words deeply. The restlessness inside me faded away completely. I stood up and returned to the village. Gia was waiting for me at our gate. She did not ask where I had been. She simply took my hand and smiled. "The council meeting ran long today," she said. "We are planning to expand the school building. More children are being born each year now. We need more space for them to learn." I listened to her talk about her day. I watched her face light up with excitement. This was the life I had fought for. This was the peace I had died for. Beyond the hellfire was this simple moment, a moment of ordinary love and ordinary joy. We walked into our home together, hand in hand. The sun set behind the monument on the hill. Its light painted the sky in brilliant colors. The hellscape was a memory fading with time. The system was a story told to children. The regressions were a burden I had released. I was just a man with a past, but I was also a man with a future beyond the hellfire and the pain, a future filled with light and love and life. That night, I slept without any dreams for once. I slept the sleep of the truly peaceful. I woke to the sun on my face. I woke to Jia's breathing beside me. I woke to a world without frost or fear. I rose and began my day with gratitude. Beyond the hellfire was a new beginning, and I would cherish every moment of it. For myself, and for those who were lost, for those who would never see this dawn, I would live fully and completely for them. I would remember them with every breath I took, but I would not be trapped by the past. I would honor it by embracing the future. Beyond the hellfire was a new beginning, and it was more beautiful than I imagined. The story of the regression hellscape was over. The story of the man who remembered was done. The story of the village and its people continued, and that was the greatest victory of all.